Left-handed gavel.
Oh, no. Really? You switch.
Okay, I call this special retreat to order. May we have roll call, please?
Yes. Mayor Truitt.
Here.
Vice Mayor Alton.
Here.
Councilmember Wolcott. Here. Councilmember Williams. Councilmember Villanueva.
Here.
Councilmember Woodard.
Here.
Councilmember Hall.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would everybody please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you very much. The intent of this special retreat is for the council to have essentially an open-ended discussion here amongst ourselves to talk about our long-term goals, which have been fairly well defined in the past, but then talk about shorter-term strategies in how we position ourselves and decisions we make in order to get towards those long-term goals. So we've got several areas that we're going to be talking about, namely transportation, sustainability, job creation / economic development, tourism and recreation, higher education, which will include a discussion on sustainability. And what the council has done is had many groups of 3 that met to talk about these various areas, and we've asked one person from each group to kind of lead the discussion, and the idea was that we would come to this retreat better prepared and have sort of a starting point so that we're not starting off with a blank sheet of paper. Instead, we're coming up with some ideas that the mini group has, and then it's going to be open discussion. Those ideas can stand, or they can be modified, or they can be discarded. It's just to get us at a good starting point. So without further discussion, I'll turn this over to transportation. Sharon Wolcott.
Mayor, if I may, appreciate the opportunity. I want to thank staff has put a lot of time into preparing this process here today for you with your information that you've given to us throughout the week. And, you know, from a city manager's perspective, we hope that at the end of this process that we you know, I can identify obviously the priorities of these initiatives, but really get into the meat of how we put together and propose budgets, and how we can once again rejuvenate our CIP capital project schedule. Right now, it's really stalled, and there really is no vision there, and all these initiatives will potentially have a dollar figure to them, and in that CIP process and that schedule, that 3-year, 5-year, 7-year, 10-year plan will be very important to implement this. So with that, I know that Councilmember Wolcott and Jeff have had a discussion prior, and I think, Jeff, you want to kind of get this going, and Ms. Wolcott will take over, and we'll go from there.
One more thing, if I may. What we're intending to do is to give each area full opportunity for discussion, so we may or may not complete all of the areas this afternoon. If we don't, we'll go to our next have another retreat and complete that. We're anticipating that there will be some dialogue this evening with staff, but we further are looking forward to having greater dialogue after staff has time to absorb the information hear what after they've heard this council, and then we're looking forward to them coming up with some thoughts. And at the end of the day, hopefully, it'll put everybody, the council and staff, on the same page, understanding what the goals and the strategies are to get there. Mr. Mihalik.
Chair, members of council, I'll be brief.
Okay, excuse me. The mics are not, our folks in the audience are not hearing us, so we're going to have to try and really speak up.
Better?
No.
Not at all.
There.
Check. There we go. Members of council, I'll be brief. We do see this as a two-stage process where the subcommittee chairs were kind enough to forward to me PowerPoint presentations, which we've loaded up tonight, which would be great ways for us to have good dialogue among council, and staff will take certainly a back seat on that. We've also been able to take the PowerPoint information and to put them into bullets in a strategic plan format. And after the PowerPoint presentations, we'll put those up and Deb Perry will be here, and council will be able to see those on the screen, and so will our residents. And if there's areas where we want to modify some language along the way, we'll be able to do that live, and everybody will be able to see it, and you have hard copies in front of you. Then we'll go back and take a look at that and come up with some what we think would be good funding strategies, maybe do some wordsmithing of the document, bring it back to you, and we're shooting for hopefully September 9th. And at that meeting, we'll provide you with those funding strategies. We'll ask the mayor and council to prioritize all of the strategies. You can tell us where to focus in on. And then once we get that plan put together, we'd recommend that we have a stakeholder outreach process in the month of September to take this to the residents, to the property owners, and so on, and get their input on the strategic plan. And that way there's full transparency, and we'll bring it back. So I'll turn it over to Councilmember Wolcott, and we'll see the first PowerPoint presentation.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Oh, no.
No? Okay. Try again. Can you hear me? Can everybody
Folks
hear me?
here? No.
Okay. All right. Can you hear me now? I've heard that line before. Okay. I'm going to open this up. And you will have to pardon me because I'm not particularly great with this kind of technology, so I'll do my best.
Double right click.
Double right click. Open. That doesn't look like the same that we did it earlier, Jeff.
Hit cancel, and then we'd come back down to it again, and 2 double clicks it real fast. There you go.
There we go. Okay, well, again, this is our transportation. These are really kind of generated from the notes from our subcommittee on transportation. And Jeff and I talked through these, just to try to put it in a format that was easy for us to look at and kind of put some pictures to it that would give it a little bit more illustrative feel. And so we hope you understand and feel comfortable with the format that we've laid out here. I think there's an arrow down here someplace. There it is. So first of all, we talked about a vision statement, and we wanted to make certain that what we were doing was being very simple and clear, that what we wanted to do was the City of Surprise have an efficient, cost-effective, multimodal transportation network that provides commuter choice, ease of movement into, within, and out of Surprise. So that was our vision statement, which we talked about. Then the next piece was talking about how we are up at 30,000 feet, and we're looking at how we are connected to the region. And as you can see here, there's a picture of the Hacienda freeway system, which is the red line. The City of Surprise participated in this Hacienda freeway study a few years ago, and it has created quite a bit of interest in not only the West Valley, but the entire region, because this is the potential connector from Las Vegas down to our metropolitan area around the backside of the White Tanks, and potentially connecting us all the way into Phoenix on the East Metro. So this is the Hacienda Freeway study alignment. It shows also the potential area for the Interstate 11, which has not yet been designated by Congress, but that is one of those things that we certainly want to be involved and engaged in, because this particular corridor in the future proposes to have a great deal of potential for the City of Surprise and all of the West Valley. So this is one of the pieces. Again, we're starting at the top, kind of at 30,000 feet, and we're just going to keep drilling down till we get closer to our home streets. But the important thing is for all of us to see how all of it's interconnected and how it works together, and that we really do have to think in the long term.
Excuse me, if you don't mind, would you identify the people on the subcommittee that work with you on this?
Certainly. That would have been the mayor and myself and Councilman Villanueva on the transportation subcommittee. So again, this is the Hacienda study. And now you can see how, here, I'll try this pen. There we go. You can see how the Hacienda corridor comes down and connects and ends up connecting over into the East Valley. So this is a real long-term vision, but it has huge impacts on our corridor. And we have the potential for actually creating a new rail corridor connection that would actually connect Union Pacific to the Burlington Northern up in here someplace. There's a potential for connecting through rail, which would totally change the picture on how we move freight. And right now, one of the things that happens in Arizona is 60% of the freight from the California ports moves right over the top of Arizona and doesn't stop here. And that's a missed economic opportunity for the state of Arizona, and particularly for us in the West Valley. So we want to be engaged in that discussion.
Sharon?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Or
Sure. Yeah, this is open discussion.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Sharon, how is 11 funded? Is that totally federal dollars?
It will be the lion's share of it would be a federal piece. This would be a federal designated corridor, federally designated interstate corridor. So yes, it is a federal road, and it would be substantially federally funded. However, there's interest in public-private partnership in this corridor. So there's a possibility of some partnerships with stakeholders from the private sector as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So the next piece. Now we're drilling down a little bit, and we're starting to talk about, we're beginning to talk more about the areas here in the City of Surprise. And you've often heard us talk about, for years really, about developing strategies on getting more east-west and north-south connectors. We already know as a council we have prioritized Litchfield Road as a top priority of ours. Greenway, Peoria, and Northern Avenue are all things that we're exploring, but we have not identified where the best strategy is for connecting ourselves from the 303 to the 101 and on into Highway 17. And I think the important thing to remember is that we really need to find ways to reach out to our neighboring communities and not only connect with them, but strategize and prioritize in a way that we're truly working on the same corridor at the same time. In other words, to deliver a more efficient service. Reality is if we were to say we're going to go Peoria, and let's say the other communities were going to work on Northern, we would be looking at a missed opportunity. So it's something that we need to reach out together and work on together to try to find a way to strategize and coordinate with our neighboring communities and reaching outside of the boundaries of the City of Surprise.
Now, Sharon,
Yep.
is Greenway, Peoria, and Northern right now, currently, at the 303, two-lane roads? I think they're all two-lane roads right now.
Pretty much two-lane
Right?
roads down at the 303. Yes.
At
Yes.
the 303, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that would have to be one of the things we talk about, huh? Is that starting there to create
Well,
more off-ramp capacity, or
well,
what?
again, I'm trying to stay kind of like big picture here,
Yeah, yeah.
and looking at what's the best strategy to find a way to move people efficiently in and out of the community.
Right.
And we know that the 303 is going to be a huge economic opportunity for us, and so we have to find a way to strategize that whole corridor for economic development purposes. And when you look at the investments of transportation, how that relates to economic development, those numbers rate anywhere from 8 to 1 to 40 to 1 are the numbers that I've heard. For every dollar invested for transportation, you're generating anywhere between $8 and $40 of economic activity. So it's a strategy that we have to work on together. But again, that's getting down into the details that we're not quite ready to discuss. I think what we need to really think about long term right now is where do we want to
Getting
go,
to 17.
and how do we want to get to these neighboring communities in and out of? There's a lot of our constituents, they want to travel to Westgate, for example, or they want to travel to Phoenix, and we want them to come to us as well. So we just need to come up with a strategy that makes it the most feasible and put it in an order that makes the most sense. And that's something that we're going to have to be more process-oriented and think about, not only as a city council, but as our planning commission, our transportation commission, more process-oriented.
Sharon, a
Yeah.
question. South of town is fine, and it would certainly eliminate or alleviate a lot of the traffic, but north of town or north of Bella is also a problem. Do you have anything in your planning process or your focus areas that are looking at getting over to 101 to the north of Bella?
Actually, Jeff and I discussed this earlier today. The Greenway, Peoria, and Northern Avenue, these are things that they're just potential corridors. And if we wanted to put a blue line on every potential corridor, this would be a very busy map. We're not that far. And so there are options that we all have to look at as a city, as our planning department, as our transportation department. We have to look at all of these in the big picture and figure out the best strategy. So this is not a question of picking Greenway, Peoria, or Northern today. This is a matter of these are potential corridors that we need to look at, and there are so many more, and we just didn't put them all on the map.
Yeah. Now, I think maybe what the Vice Mayor is talking about is that there seems to be a rejuvenation of interest by the county and the city of Peoria to do at least a low water crossing at Deer Valley to Williams. And that takes a lot of relief off of Bell, because right now El Mirage is being expanded to 4 lanes. So Sun City West people, rather than coming down to Bell Road, could take Deer Valley right over to the 101. So is that true? Is there a rejuvenation of interest in that, Bob, that you know about? And
yes, there is, it's evolving. At this point in time, Peoria is in the leadership role, working with the county in pursuing various alternatives. They're still evaluating different crossings, that being one. And what we have for council is probably either in September or early October to give you an update on where the study stands, what are some of the issues, both on the political and the engineering side, and then share that information for council direction as far as a position we may want to take on adding information to that study.
okay.
For right now, I think the intent is probably just to give an understanding that there's lots of opportunities that lie out in the future, like some of these that we see on the screen and others that we've mentioned that are up north. And I think that Sharon's working her way down to where we're going to be talking about what can we do now to move towards those opportunities.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't mean to get her off track.
No, these are all valid questions, and I think the point is that we want to try to see how all of it fits into the big picture and work at the macro level, and go down to the micro level. But we don't want to spend a whole lot of time just getting buried in the weeds right now, because these discussions are really long-term vision discussions that we have to have, and it's not going to all occur this evening certainly, but. We need to know what the process is. We need to make the process as organic as possible, as citizen-driven. Citizens need to participate. We need to really engage in the citizen participation process and utilize our advisory commissions, which Skip and I are working on, and Mike working on interviewing new people to engage in these commissions. But we really do want to make those discussions more organic and bring in more public participation. So
Sharon,
these are just
Sharon, one more question.
Sure.
I thought I read where Glendale was funded for the Northern Parkway. Do you know how far west that would come?
There has been, as far as I know, an ongoing discussion about the Northern Parkway. Of course, that's a priority of Glendale's.
Right.
And not that long ago, apparently there was a discussion at a staff level that kind of sort of chopped off the future alignment of the Northern Parkway corridor all the way out to the 303. So it's a discussion that I think we need to kind of reopen and have reaching out to our neighbors to make certain that what we are doing is fully participating and cooperating with our neighboring communities. Because I'll tell you, as a Surprise resident, for one of my east-west corridors that I use all the time is Northern. I use it all the time to get over to the 101. So for me, it's really a convenient.
Northern, Glendale's committed to doing the Northern Parkway. The concern that Glendale has, and an area of opportunity I think that Sharon would be talking about, would be the decision, I think, has already been made that there isn't going to be an interchange at Northern in the 303, and that's a disappointment to Glendale, and quite frankly, it's a disappointment to Surprise, because that interchange would help both communities. If it comes back for discussion, or there's a possibility of supporting Glendale in that interchange, that might be one of the things we want to talk about. Would we agree to support Glendale if that opportunity?
Why would that be good? Why would that be good for Surprise, Lynn?
Well, the more east-west corridors that we can get to relieve Bell Road and other roadways, main arterials in Surprise, the better.
Okay, but most of our population is to the north and east of that. So they're not going to be taking the northern interchange.
Okay, and understand, really, Northern is not really in our arena for decision-making, other than supporting another community, which is what the point, I think, is that we need to learn to partner and support other communities so that we have full connectivity.
Right.
Yeah.
That is the point. And it really is about partnership. And so one of the things that the mayor and I, when we were in Texas last week, we heard again and again during the Transportation Summit in Texas that what's happening now is, you know, the money is so constrained. And the federal money that is available is a very competitive environment, and they're asking all of us to reach out and partner with one another so that the taxpayers get a better bang for their buck, and that's a reasonable request. That we look at ways where we can partner and create corridors that benefit all of us, and we do truly have regional connectivity. And like we said in the early page vision statement, that it is multimodal in nature, that you actually have choices. One of the things that was drummed home in Texas last week was that in other countries, when they think about transportation, they think about destination. So when you buy a ticket from point A to point B, you might have 3 segments of that trip, and it might be 3 different modes. But they're so integrated, you literally walk across the platform and get on your second mode in the second leg. Whereas here, you fly from Dallas to Phoenix, and then you figure out, well, how am I going to get to Surprise? And so you got to call a cab, or you got to call a shuttle, or you've got to call a friend to pick you up. So it's truly, in other countries, they're doing a much better job of integrating the transportation systems, and we are attempting to try to find ways to truly integrate a multimodal system here as well. So again, that really gets us to a point where we really need to reach out and partner with our neighboring communities. The key is that we've got to get out of this very parochial mindset. We need to reach out and partner with our neighbors, whether it's the Grand Avenue corridor or any of these surface transportation corridors. We need to partner with our neighbors.
Yeah.
And that's what part of being a regionalist is.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I just don't want to usurp any of our economic viability north of that. I'm all for cooperating with Glendale, but remember, we're going to have a huge future investment to the north of that in the city of Surprise.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to, if somebody's coming off I-10 and goes north on the 303, I want them to come into Surprise first, and then they can decide to go to Glendale. You know what I mean?
Okay.
That's just me. Now, maybe that's a little parochial, but...
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to move on because I don't want to get too deep into the detailed discussions about who goes first, Skip. But I do understand what you're saying. Again, back to the whole concept of regional linkages. And you see our city with the 60 corridor, which of course was the original direct route to Las Vegas. This is an opportunity now with that corridor now being looked at for commuter rail. I know Wickenburg is looking at a planning grant. We just found out this afternoon that they actually are submitting a planning grant. But if you think about it, this whole area, we're talking about creating the Haciampa connector, where we actually could have the potential for high-speed rail out of Las Vegas coming out down this corridor and then connecting up with Hacienda. And there's a possibility that what we could do is rethink this corridor, since we want to connect the Burlington Northern here down to the Union Pacific, and I can't see on this map where the UP line comes out.
It's close. You're right down in there, right?
Right in there.
Yeah.
At any rate, if we were to connect those corridors, we might have an opportunity to really rethink, because this has really become now a densely urbanized corridor all the way into Phoenix, and rethinking the Burlington Northern Strip from, somewhere around here, all the way into Phoenix, as an opportunity for transit-oriented development and urban renewal, and really concentrating this more as a transit corridor than a freight corridor, with some opportunities with rail spurs into our business parks and the like. But a major freight movement would then be split off to come back down here and in or out and connect with UP. So those are all things that we need to be looking at in terms of a big picture of connectivity and opportunities to kind of rethink and repurpose corridors that have been around for a long time, and now that we've grown, looking at other opportunities along the way. Let's see. Okay. Help me, Jeff.
Click down and we'll just kind of
go. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, all right. The orange is the express bus routes. Commuter rail is the red line. And there's potential looking at these corridors that are in purple for bus rapid transit. Some have looked at Grand Avenue as a possible bus rapid transit. That's one of the reasons why what we really need to be doing is moving forward with alternatives analysis to try to determine which is the right mode for any one of these corridors. And that's one of the things that we're looking at doing right now for our 60 corridor. It's part of the process in order to really move forward on developing these modes and commuter rail, is you have to go through the federal process and the alternatives analysis in order to make sure that you can demonstrate that you've chosen the right mode of transit for that corridor.
Sharon, can I ask a question?
Please do.
Are we saying we're going to change the route of our current express buses to where they're north-south rather than going down Grand?
I don't want anybody to take any lines that you see on this map as literal at this stage of the game.
Okay. Okay.
Whether it was any slide, it was just trying to be illustrative that, there are options. And, this is all part of the regional planning process. It is not, these are not fixed ideas. These are just things that we're discussing, that we're just throwing out there as a region and as a city. And as the West Valley. So these are all just ideas and thoughts. I mean, believe me, if you believed every literal map that you saw printed, you would believe that Bell Road is somehow going to be built from the 303 all the way to Scottsdale Road as LRT. And I've seen that published in a newspaper, and I called MAG and I said, what the heck is going on? And they said, damage control, because that's never going to happen.
Oh, okay.
So, so that was just an oops.
I thought maybe there was a connectivity issue on Interstate 10 that I wasn't aware of.
Well,
to where the express bus would go down and pick up rail or something, or some kind of.
These are all options.
Yeah.
I mean, these are all options that we need to explore. It might be. That,
again, this is kind of an overview. Most of these decisions do not lie with this council.
Right.
There are regional decisions that happen at MAG, happen with the state.
But our
with
express
ADOT.
bus is our decision.
And so this is an overview of how, first of all, for the council to have an understanding of the larger picture and why it's important for us to be as active as possible in these different committees and decision-making processes. And again, take us down, have the overview, and then take us down to what can we do today or tomorrow to move towards this.
But if I'm not clear on something, I'm going to ask a question.
Good.
Okay?
Sure.
All right. And so that might not sit well with everybody, but I'm going to ask the question if I'm unclear on something.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Good.
Anything else on this slide, Skip?
Nope. That's
Okay.
it. That was all.
All right. Here is the commuter rail corridor. And again, you see this going all the way up, potentially up into Wickenburg. Again, this could be a real opportunity for us for urban renewal and really focusing this more on a corridor where you're moving more people than you are freight, especially if we do pursue, and this is so long range, this is really out there, but we do have to think about it today. This may be very long range, but you got to think about these things because transportation planning takes a long time to implement. And if there is the potential of moving high-speed rail connection from Los Angeles to Las Vegas and then down to Phoenix through our corridor, that actually bumps up the potential for this being a corridor for moving people and actually splitting off here and creating an opportunity for moving freight along the backside. And when you think about that, there's opportunities galore. I mean, one of the things that we like to think about is the potential for manufacturing and jobs that we could create along this corridor, perhaps utilizing this line just more on a passenger corridor, but still having access to this corridor for freight to get to supply, let's say, a parcel of land that you could create manufacturing jobs in a large parcel of land. The potential for warehousing jobs, warehousing and storage jobs along the backside, along here, along 10, pretty big, pretty large opportunity. I don't know why this is not working. Here it is. Okay. Any questions on this piece? This corridor actually was adopted as part of the commuter rail study that was adopted by MAG. And actually, it goes on from here and goes down to the southeast. It's really, in my view, it needs to be thought of as one line. In the commuter rail study was looking at the southeast corridor as probably being the first line because it's more densely populated. But the reality is that that is also a different rail line that operates the southeast corridor, and they are typically less friendly to commuter rail than the Burlington Northern is. Nationwide, Burlington Northern has been very cooperative in working on commuter rail, and this may very well be the first line that ends up opening, even though it is second in line in terms of priority for the region.
Plus, isn't the Southeast more heavily invested in freeways than the West Valley?
They are pretty well built out in their freeway system, and we are not fully built out.
Yeah.
But that also, I know Michael likes to use the phrase, change the color of money. That's one of the things that we hear a lot about. Now that their freeway system is built out in the East Valley, they would certainly like to take those resources that are available to the region and spend them on their other needs, which are transit, rail, and the like. So we have to make certain that our needs and our desires are protected as well. But it behooves us to reach beyond Central Phoenix to the East Valley to find ways that we're fully connected on all modes. So again, these are regional decisions. Each one of our communities has a place at the table at the MAG, and we work through these issues together. And hopefully, we're just going to keep growing on our ability to work cooperatively in the West Valley. Okay. Help me, Jeff. Thank you. Now we really are drilling down to kind of more local potential. And again, do not look at any line on this map as written in stone. These are just things that we're exploring and things to just kind of get the ideas rolling. So we talked about as a subcommittee, do we want to have a local circulator system? And we talked about that in the past, having a local circulator system, and we were told in the past that the city of Surprise was not really laid out very well for transit. Well, then we need to be thinking in the future, how do we better lay out our city so that it's transit friendly? And that's one of the reasons why we really need to be thinking about these corridors along Grand and Bell and Greenway and the like, the 303. How do we better lay out future community development so that it is transit friendly? One of the things that the mayor had mentioned as a member of the Planning Commission, I think, was talking about bus bays and with lighted seating. kind of building that into development agreements where a new development would have those kinds of things already in place.
Right.
And we are starting to do that as a city. So it's just planning ahead, thinking about all the different corridors and the way they might work together. But again, these are not written in stone.
This works.
Okay. Does this work?
Let's turn this off.
Okay. Thanks, Richard. The other thing that we talked about in our subcommittee was the trail system and having them as multi-purpose trail systems that link the entire city, find ways to link them so that we're looking at bikeways, pathways, and even expanding and enhancing the use of electric carts. I know Vice Mayor was very passionate about putting together a map of where we can use our golf carts. Some parts of our city are more amenable to that than others, but, long-range visioning, when we're thinking about how we lay out the communities in the future, should we not be, including ways to enhance the use of electric carts? Actually, Richard and I were at a town hall meeting yesterday, and a woman came up to us, and she said to me, "Can you do something about air quality?" Well, guess what? That's a transportation issue, because the biggest culprit in air quality issues is in our region really is the automobile. Yes, PM10 is a big issue. It's a very big issue, but the automobile is a much bigger issue. So we need to be looking at these multi-modes and using transportation modal policy as a way of helping address some of these air quality issues. So they are all linked in terms of public policy issues. Skip, you're always very entertaining.
Sorry about that.
So the next piece is, okay, we have all these big dreams and visions. Well, how are you going to pay for it? Because this stuff doesn't grow on trees. And, we've talked about impact fees. I know that became an issue, has become an issue in a lot of different arenas about how we deal with impact fees fairly and equally around the city, and how we work with our development community in terms of impact fees and making sure that we find a way to pay for the infrastructure that's needed. We need to do a better job of really getting engaged with the federal government. Arizona has not had a long history of really being in the federal game. We need to fix that. We need to be more aggressive with that, especially with federal grants, because you're going to see more and more, and this is something that we've been learning especially over the last 6 months with our trips to D.C. and our trip to Texas, that federal grant money is going to be, that's where a lot of the money is going to be coming down. And so we need to be very aggressive in the federal grant money. Should we be looking at a local sales tax that's earmarked for local transportation? We all know that we have half-built roads that need to be built out. State statute has long been in play that you could assess roads, but basically if a developer wants to sit it out for 10 years, they really wouldn't be on the hook for those assessments if they waited for 10 years. And so it was changed to 15 years, which is a little less interesting to have to wait that out for 15 years. But should we perhaps even look at an initiative to repeal that 15-year window altogether, and just let's go. Let's work in partnership, and let's build the road and not have half-built, scalloped roads. Is that something that we should be looking at as an initiative that we work on as a city and working with our partners in the region? Should we be setting up a revolving loan fund? That's something that I've done in the past. I know that Jeff has done that in the past with revolving loan funds for economic development. It's just another funding mechanism, and I think we all need to be looking at ways that we can fund these transportation initiatives. We can't afford anything right now. There's absolutely nothing that's going to help us really move forward our CIP plan if we can't find ways to fund it. So we really need to be looking at these funding strategies. And there might be a way of, again, when we're partnering with our neighboring communities, there might be a way of working together to make these funding strategies kind of work hand in hand with one another. And so we want to explore all those options as well in terms of those partnerships that could be available to us. So again, going back to this action plan, we're looking at how do we ensure a full partnership and development with our neighbors and other stakeholders in the private sector, and how do we start building working coalitions, something that the mayor and I have been working on now for several months on working to build a coalition of willing partners here in the West Valley. We need to be more proactive in utilizing our city commissions to engage and encourage dialogue amongst the citizens. And honestly, they're the ones that are going to be more actively engaged at the local level with citizens in open forums and the like. They can help us educate the public about the needs and the ways that we can go about putting together a fully fleshed out transportation vision and then pay for it. It might be that someday down the line we might want to investigate a reasonable, rational bonding strategy, for example, as part of the CIP plan. But it's one of those things that we have to have. The folks back home that are paying the freight need to know what it is we're buying. And so we need to have a strategy on how we engage the folks in the dialogue. Updating our transportation impact ordinance is just another policy piece that we need to look at. Maybe maybe we should be investigating, as other communities have, a local sales tax, since we're struggling so much with finding available resources to pay for our transportation systems. Maybe we should be looking at that. And a question that we want to throw out in terms of our CIP allocation: what % of the general fund is the appropriate amount? Is it 1% of the general fund that we set aside every year for our capital improvement plan, or is it 5%, or is it someplace in between? These are all discussions I think that we just need to have in the future in terms of figuring out how we're going to fund these much-needed projects. Part of that reaching out is, again, back to educating the public, and this is always a huge piece. If you want people to really embrace these local initiatives, they need to know what's going on. And that's why we have all these lovely people here in our audience, because they care about what's going on. And that's why they're here at City Hall. And so we want to make sure that we engage them at every turn that we possibly can to let them know what it is we're proposing, what it is we're dreaming about, and how we're putting together an action plan. And so we've talked, the mayor, and actually several of us have talked with Jeff and Mark and others about putting together a long-range symposium, transportation symposium, to try to educate the public about what's out there, going all the way from 30,000 feet with the Hacienda 11 all the way down to these local corridors and the things that we need to have at the very, very micro level. Coming up with a funding strategy for those east-west corridors. Right now, we are in the process of applying for this Tiger 2 planning grant for Grand Avenue with a transit-oriented development plan. As I said earlier, we learned today that Wickenburg is also applying for a planning grant. We're hoping that we can reach out to Wickenburg and see if we can't find ways to kind of work together so that we're not competing with one another. But this is a really long-range strategy. We just found out today that they were doing that. And we want to help each other rather than compete with one another. And this last piece really kind of goes back to a strategy of dealing with the pathways that can be used in the planning process, setting aside certain amounts of land for these multi-purpose paths. That just is part of the action plan that we want to discuss. So, am I at the end, Jeff? Okay. There you have it.
One of the things I remember talking about, really, I think that when we met as a subcommittee, we talked about issues that would face three separate departments here in Surprise, namely community development, as we're working with our developers and constructing those multimodal pathways and corridors. I know that's already in process, connecting our major arterials with other communities. But we also talked about things like pavement management. We started that discussion at the budget retreat, and that's a valid discussion for transportation, is what does that pavement management plan look like? What are the priorities, and how are we going to figure out, Scott, to pay for that? So that's down in the weeds type stuff. We need to know that so that we can come up with some financial strategies for pavement management. With understanding that community development already has a pretty strong multimodal plan, we're not sure about the connectivity with the transit, if bus bays are being required, if they're being identified by transportation, where they may go. And, of course, we know that there's not a lot of development going on right now, but we'd like to see that happen in the future. And then we also wanted to get a priorities list on terms of the scalped roads that need to be completed. We've talked about Litchfield, but there's Greenway I know is in the plan. But if we could get sort of an understanding what the priorities are based on traffic flow and other criteria that staff already has, I think, a handle on, so that we can then look at those and say, okay, how do we complete those? What's the financial plan for that? So all those things, I think, really help. They lend themselves to this master regional plan that we want to be, at the same time, participating both locally here in our community in terms of education and understanding, but also regionally with our neighboring communities and with cities across the valley. So that was kind of.
One other thing that we talked about in our subcommittee, too, was really getting a handle on all of the things, not just the scalloped roads, but other infrastructure improvements that we are obligated to. There are a number of places that we've obliged ourselves to maintain roads that have not been maintained as we had agreed to, and we need to bring those up to speed. So we really do need to have a better handle as a city council on the things that we've already obligated ourselves to. Especially, I know that Bob is working, and his department is working on creating a rural road standard for the city, and I think that's really, really important that we do have a clear understanding of what the rural road standard should look like. And again, that's going to have a whole different cost than building an urban standard road. So again, it's really identifying what we are obliged to right now, I think, is first, and building out our system. I personally would fear that we don't jump too far ahead, because I wouldn't want to see us just build the grid and then plan later. I want to see us plan these corridors and plan how we want to move forward and in a rational strategy for planning our city, and make sure that the transportation plan matches that. I know that the city of Phoenix has done a really good job, and the region has done a really good job of laying out a grid, but I don't want to be building a grid out in the middle of desert if we decide that we have planned we haven't gone that far. We're not ready to plan that. It might very well be something that we want to save as a part of the desert that we want to preserve for a park or whatever.
Now, one of the things that we understand is that transportation is integral to every one of these topics that we're going to be talking about. When Skip talks about tourism, we need to get people in and out of our community. When Richard talks about economic development, we need to have a roadway system that's going to support that. When John talks about education, we need to have the arterials and the freeways to be able to sustain a four-year university. When we talk about sustainability and quality of life, again, that goes to transportation system. So at the end of this whole discussion, we're anticipating that this isn't a standalone subject, that it's going to be fully integrated with all of these other presentations and goals that we have as a council.
What I asked Deb to do, if she could go back up real quick, Deb, to the top. What we've done with the PowerPoints, again, is go all the way up, please. We're taking what you guys created in your PowerPoints through your subcommittees, and then we're putting them into, again, a simple format that can be evolved into an actual strategic plan we can show residents. So he's going to have the vision statement, the focus areas, and as Deb goes down, then the funding strategies, and further down the action plan. And as you were speaking and articulating some other thoughts, we've added a few, the pavement management, scallop streets, rural road cross-section. If there's anything as we go along that you don't want us to add, you want us to modify as you see it, because we do have a hard copy in front of you, just let us know, because we're trying to build this document today as we sit and discuss it, which I thought was your expectation. So,
in regards to the scallop streets, Jeff, does that include, and I'm glad the mayor and Sharon brought this up, because this, and by the way, great job, Sharon, Mayor, Councilmember Villanueva. This is a great overview and a great plan and very articulate for long-range connectiveness in and out of the city. But all the while you're going through this, I was in the weeds thinking about Greenway, thinking about there's a portion of Cactus Road that is gravel from Cotton Lane to Community. So that's just in response to a policy that we have that development pays for itself, and that happened to be a development on the other side of what was paying for itself. So if that's inclusive in prioritized completion of scallop streets, that's another priority, certainly in every arterial south of Bell Road, because that seems to be the roads that I travel the most. That's a definite priority.
Do we have, Jeff, I'm trying to read, but do we have the internal bus transportation? Didn't we develop a blue and a red route at one time in the city of Surprise of a potential commuter internal bus system within the city of Surprise?
They called them circular routes.
Yeah,
and
right.
Future circular routes, they were initially in our CIP that they have now since been pushed out because of funding constraints.
Right.
But we have information about future locations for possible circular routes. Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm surely for that, because I think that's part of you know, when we talk about the city of Surprise being connected and connectivity, there's some people that don't drive in this town. There's kids that don't drive that need to get their swimming lessons. There's elderly people that don't drive because of eyesight, whatever. And I think an internal system within the city of Surprise, moving people from points of interest, from the stadium to the swimming to Ultra Star Theater to Sun City Grand to et cetera, will really help the city in terms of being part of a city rather than being so isolated. So
I appreciate, Sharon, the 30,000-foot picture of transportation, without a doubt. And I think that's a very important part of our long-range planning for transportation in and out of the city. My concern right now is more related to within the city, as Skip said, our circulator bus routes or whatever, transportation routes, getting people in and out and around just right within our own city. And I think that's an area that we need to look at and begin to look at funding for, not ignoring the long-range plans, but integrating what we need within the city into those plans as we understand them today. But I think our emphasis at this point, my emphasis, I'll say, is getting around in this city and making it easy for people to come in and go where they want to go in a reasonable amount of time.
Let me just agree with you, but also ask you to think about this. We want to get around our city, but we also want to enhance the reasons to get around the city. In other words, bring more economic opportunity to our city.
Right.
And if we don't get up to the 30,000-foot level and start working our way down to how we get things to come, business activity, jobs, and the like, to come to the city of Surprise, then we're going to have a circulator system that just drives around looking for a place to stop. We need to find a way that it works together, both from the outside coming in as well as the inside working around the community. So it really isn't just a one approach. It is an integrated approach.
Later we're going to be talking about sustainability, and sustainability means a lot of things to a lot of different people. And but one of the things would be that circulator route or routes need to be sustainable. And so it would be good to understand, okay, well, what does it take in ridership and in intensity of development to make a circulator route sustainable? Because maybe, probably, we're not there today, but how are we going to know we have arrived unless we have an understanding of what it looks like?
Good point. Good point. And also what our rate structure would be. You know what I'm saying, Jeff? In other words, that needs to be a piece of it, just like you're saying. What is the rate that would be charged, and what's the elasticity of that, right? In terms of ridership.
And remember that all transit is subsidized.
Yeah, I know. Oh, no. I understand. It wouldn't be a break-even situation. I understand that.
I just have one question. Going back to the presentation. On the Tiger II grants, Councilmember Walcott, you alluded to the fact that we kind of stumbled upon the fact that Wickenburg is applying as well, and it's good to see that collaborative partnership. How do we track if you're thinking regionally, how do we track all the grants that are being applied for? It seems that, going back to this, the development of these regional working coalitions might help with the communication and working together on these things. But I was just curious as far as how that works. How did we stumble upon that?
Yeah, let me clarify that. We didn't stumble upon it.
Well,
actually,
say that,
the city of Wickenburg sent me a letter asking for my support. And before I was willing to do that, I wanted council to be aware of it and staff to be aware of it to understand what ramifications there would be, if any. And so that's why it's now being distributed or been distributed. We'll look at that. Also, they're doing some very interesting projects with that money, if they get it, in terms of rail spurs and so forth. And how do we support that and benefit from their efforts?
But to your question, John, the reality is, while in that they have reached out to us looking for our support, you're right, the coalition building process is an important part so that we actually get the word earlier in the game and find out how we might be able to integrate our application with their application. And so that's one of the reasons why we have been putting together kind of this grand vision of a West Valley coalition that can partner in these kinds of things. Our grant writers can meet on a regular basis and figure out how we might collaborate on some of these grant applications. And that's exactly what the federal government and agencies are asking us to do, is to collaborate. And you're going to see more successful awards if you do collaborate. Oftentimes what we get worried about, and we get very excited about trying to help somebody, but sometimes without having reached out and collaborated and see how those pieces fit together, we might actually be shooting ourselves in the foot by supporting somebody else. That's why we have to get out of this parochial mode and into a collaborative mode.
Right.
And I think you're right. I think that the building of coalitions is going to help us immensely.
Sharon, to Councilwoman Williams' point, is there a way that isn't Joy handling grants now in Scott's department, I believe? Okay, isn't there a way that Joy could track all grants that are being applied for transportation in the state of Arizona or in Maricopa County? Isn't there a way to do that?
I think, I don't know, Mark, have you set up a schedule of how we're handling federal grants versus local grants?
Councilmember Walcott, Michael Salai and I have spoken about putting together an inventory of grants that are currently in process, currently available, and currently we've applied for and no longer on our list, so that we can update not only the mayor and council but staff on a quarterly basis on where we're at, and then a timeline on the potential funding opportunities. Because in order to implement a strategic plan, we need to know where our funding opportunities are coming from, and so we also need to speculate when that available money might come to us if we were awarded. So, yes, an inventory sheet is being put together. There's nothing today, Skip, that is formalized, but you would look for us to get that accomplished probably in the next 90 days.
I was just thinking maybe there was a website, a website of all the grants that are applied for that.
Not necessarily from the city of Surprise, but from all the municipalities.
We understand. We understand.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of discussion and given, I think, some direction for staff to come back with some information. Transportation is yours, Mr. Beckley. Do you have any thoughts or questions? Or?
I have a question, really, and it may help to kind of focus us based on the discussion that's occurred in this setting. I see three different, if you look at the top of the list as far as your outline, Jeff, if you could move to that. We're talking about focus areas. Those are the areas that if someone walks away from here, they can say in maybe 3 sentences or 4 sentences what we're talking about, because transportation is diverse and complex. And those 3 that I've heard at least was first to position and plan to put the city in a position to take advantage of all future regional opportunities, connection with our local partners, and also to Skip's question, how do we coordinate better with our neighbors and also regional entities within the city, within the region, and so that our plans become their plans, we get invested in each other's mutual successes. The second point being addressing current transportation and transit needs. We really have to take care of the problems that face us today within our city. That's what our residents expect. That's going to be a very top, high priority. And then the third, as Mayor, you indicated, the integration of transportation and all of the other goals that we share. What piece of, and drive the other success of the other plans, it really is another leg that our goals should stand upon. So in those 3 different categories, that sets up all of the issues that we've talked about today typically fall in one of those 3 areas. And as we leave this meeting and try to develop our strategies to meet the goals that we define, they will help, it will translate. This is related to this goal. This will help ourselves as a city, our residents, as well as our employees try to meet these objectives.
Yeah, exactly. And along those lines, Council, do you remember that yellow sustainability or the goal strategies that used to be posted all over?
Right.
Well, what do you think about doing something similar, having the strategy, talk about transportation, and then having 6 or 7 points under transportation that go from short-term strategies to long-term?
I like that.
And then we do that in each area, and it would be our story. You know, if somebody said, okay, what's your goal, what's your plan, what are your strategies? Here it is.
Here it is.
Black and white or yellow and purple, whatever it turns out to be.
Right.
So,
I like that. Very
okay.
much.
Any other discussion on transportation? Thanks, Sharon. Great job.
Good job, Sharon.
Excuse me?
That we're doing? Tourism next?
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to go by what's on the sustainability, but you got things loaded differently, is that it?
It's okay.
Yeah, does anybody have yeah, I was, in order to be objective, I was just going to, okay, somebody put it on the list this way we'll go. But that's another form of objectivity, is the way you got it loaded in the computer. So I can deal with that. So we're going to tourism?
Okay. Okay, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Vice Mayor Alton and Councilmember Woodard for their input. It was kind of amazing. You know, we have a tourism board. It's a very active board. It's a new board. It's been around about a year with some real quality people on it. They put together a strategic plan with Mark Coronado's help and Melissa's and Donna's and a lot of people from the Recreation Department. But I thought it was a very well done tourism strategy plan. But we didn't even, when the Vice Mayor and Mike and I met, we didn't even have that in the room. We didn't even look at it. But yet, everything we talked about was in the Tourism Board strategic plan, because I went back home and looked at it and went, hey, they said the same thing. So that's kind of neat in terms of being aligned, so to speak. So I just want to start with that. I want to pass this out, if you could, and then I'll highlight it. Just as, is this kind of a, one more? Yeah, sure. Just kind of a backdrop of tourism, and I highlighted some of the areas there for you. In 2009, the direct travel spending in Arizona generated $2.4 billion in local, state, and federal tax revenues, which equated to $1,008 per Arizona household. So you can take a look at that as an offset to the family tax budget. Business development and traction is also a key component of Arizona's economy. The tourism industry is a driving force in establishing the quality of life message, which is an interesting point because we're going to be talking about that in another subject, how tourism plays into the quality of life. The economic impact of Arizona tourism industry, 35.3 million domestic and international travelers came to Arizona in 2009. 80% of them were out-of-state visitors, which is a huge number. The traveler spending generated 157,200 travel industry-related jobs in 2009. And with the induced and indirect employment, a combined total of 292,200 jobs. On the second page, I just pointed out that tourism is the only export-oriented industry generating revenue to all 15 Arizona counties. So it's another way to look at it. There's a graph there that shows you how microelectronics is probably the biggest export industry in the state of Arizona, but tourism is second. So it's a big industry, and it has a meaningful impact on every city in the state of Arizona. And I think the reason that we're talking about tourism is that we ought to get our fair share. And so, if we can go to, do I have a? Oh, you're gonna do it? Okay. First of all, we talked about a vision statement: increase economic activity and surprise by infusing tourism dollars into the local economy and focusing on entertainment, partnerships, resorts, and resorts, and the White Tank Mountains. So that was pretty much what our focus areas. We can go to so the focus areas is one, entertainment district creation. Now, I can go through this, but I really want us to talk about this. In other words, entertainment district creation. What does that mean? I mean, Mike, when you were in the meeting with Vice Mayor and I, what did that mean to you? And let's talk about that.
When I think of that, I almost immediately think of 83rd Avenue over in Peoria, down there by the stadium. The
restaurants,
stadium. Bars,
movie theaters.
Yeah.
Okay. Kind of a collection place where people go to mingle with other people in more of a dense environment, so to speak. Okay. Is that what you're thinking, Vice Mayor, or what were you thinking?
Well, I was thinking of and this has been coined for so long here in the city of Surprise, is a vibrant 24/7 entertainment district. Mm-hmm. And that is where people work, play, and live. Mm-hmm. The possibility of having condos or lofts over retail businesses and and maybe not too many roads, but you walk from a parking lot and then go down some pathways or some connectivity routes in between each business and have them close together.
Jeff, is she taking
high
notes on this?
density.
Okay, good.
You know, one of my...
Because that was what I was thinking too, more, is connectivity in terms of mingling around and walking to place to place.
And we had a very, very well-defined Stadium Village entertainment district.
Yep.
That was exactly what we're talking about, and it got dismantled.
Yes.
And that's one of the values of having council and staff aligned on a goal, is that those goals remain intact. And a change of a council person or two, or the change of a staff member or two, doesn't change the vision, and then the vision gets dismantled.
Right.
We want something that's going to, again, it'll be our word of the day, sustainable. That's going to outlast us. That's going to be the vision that the residents feel good about and want to see happen, and that is going to move forward whether we're sitting here or not.
Okay.
And that, yeah, I would be so excited to see that come back to life.
Okay. And so I think we're reading the same sheet of music, so to speak. I think the Vice Mayor added another element to it with connectivity,
Right.
which is great. But I don't think we had any location in mind except that we got a, what's our investment in our stadium, Mark? In the tennis facility?
Well, we've made an investment at the recreation campus of approximately $80 million over the last 10 years.
So wouldn't it make sense to be proximate to that? I think that's what we were thinking, in that area. And we have land all around here, and I think we just need to figure out how to get it done and how staff can help us get there to get that done. And you know, I don't think there was any fixed site. You know what I mean, Sharon? Mm-hmm. There's different sites. I mean, but anyway, so that was one. The next thing in entertainment was the extension of current activities. The Vice Mayor brought that up, and I totally agree because I've had feedback from residents about this. Is that, for instance, we have a Memorial Day parade, and then everybody goes home. It seems like that maybe there's a way to extend the activities, to protract it over a more time period.
Certainly, and have it really extremely family friendly. You know, to have pie eating contests and sack races, and you know, and all those kind of fun things that families enjoy. But and they're already out. They're already on campus. They would maybe possibly spend a couple more, 3 or 4 hours more there rather than just watching a parade and the memorial service that takes place after.
Right. And while there may be some costs related to that, the benefit would be that we would keep people in our community longer, not just our residents, but people coming to visit, and that they would hopefully be doing some overnights, and they'd hopefully be going to the restaurants or other, spending their money in other areas of our city.
Yes, exactly. So that was an area we thought we could, that with our current assets, just think about extending the activities.
Councilmember Hall?
It's an area that we can partner with other organizations to create an overnight experience if we want to. And whether it's at Memorial Day or the surprise party, we have a lot of activities. And we can partner with various other groups, our Chamber of Commerce, the West Valley Art Museum.
The Hotel Association.
Yeah, a hotel association. There's a number of things that we can use to leverage what we already have into a larger event. We need to, I think we discussed and talked about creating a signature event for surprise.
Right, and that's the next area, I think, Mike. But Mark, you want to say something?
Yes, I do. I just, I want to make sure that when we leave here today, that staff has clear understanding, because Memorial Day Parade today, the way it stands, is not a tourism-generating event. And there are really only 2 Memorial Day parades in the country that have a tourism magnet. One's in Washington, D.C.
Right.
A budget
Right.
of $650,000
Right.
to bring in five-star generals, sports stars, actors who have military backgrounds, and people will come see. And it turns into a 3-day gala. And so, we hear this all the time, and we support this. But we want to make sure that we get the clear understanding that no disrespect, but local partnerships will not draw out-of-town visitors.
Right.
It's national partnerships and regional partnerships that will establish those, and that costs money.
Right. And we understand that, Mark. We weren't talking about making this a rose parade. Not at all. A Rose Bowl parade. It was a way to, you correct me if I'm wrong, Rich, but I think it was saying, okay, we have some current activities. We've got the big surprise party coming up in December 4th, I believe. Are we utilizing the day and the evening to maybe extend an event to where people can plug into different activities during the day or in the evening? I don't know.
That's what I heard is the parade was an example, at least that's why I took it.
Yeah.
We could use the tennis tournament as a different example, maybe even a better one, is we take existing events, and we brainstorm on how we expand those to create an even better presence in terms of tourism, overnight stays, keeping people in the community.
Yeah.
Mark?
If I may, I would like to climb back up maybe to 12,000 feet, if you wouldn't mind. One of the things that the mayor and I did when we were in Texas last week was we took a little drive to a little town called South Lake, Texas. And we spent a few minutes driving around, and I thought of this when you were saying how we'd once had a vision that kind of got dismantled. And South Lake, Texas is a city of about 26,000 people. And they didn't let their size stop them. And, usually in Texas they don't let things like that stop them. So at any rate, I had some extra time during one of the morning sessions that was more about aeronautics, and we don't have an airport, so I figured I really didn't need to spend so much time. So I took a cab back out to South Lake, and I spent quite a bit of time with the city. And I brought together a packet of materials, but I think the mayor will agree with me. When we drove around, it is a beautiful place. It is a venue for all these festivals that you're talking about that would fit quite beautifully in our city center. And one of the things that was really nice about it was it wasn't this grid. It was a lot of meandering pathways. There was City Hall in the center. Across the street was this lawn green where they had festivals and fireworks shows, and then a big bandstand, and behind that a lake with a fountain. There were no big box retailers. It was all retail shops in sort of a meandering pathways. It was this kind of enticing layout so that you literally would kind of go to the next corner and go, geez, I wonder what's around that corner. And it's very walkable, all angled parking, Richard, but it was very downtownish and kind of old-fashioned, kind of reminds me of the old-fashioned Midwestern downtown with the square. It was beautiful. And I have some maps of all the different types of shops that they have. I have copies for not for all of you, but for you to look at. And you can just see the kinds of activities that come here. I have to tell you that this little town built this from scratch. We went there thinking that it was actually an urban renewal project, but after visiting with the city manager and their public information officer and their community development folks, and they even have a tourism director, Skip.
Good.
This is a tourism magnet for them.
Cool.
This little city of 26,000 people, this is a tourism magnet. They literally bust them in to see this piece.
Cool.
It's very awesome. So I encourage you to look at these kinds of things. They have had delegations from all over the country coming in to look at the way they have done their work. And I'm going to give one to Jeff. the whole
Well,
package.
those are the
but-
kind of things, Sharon, that we need to really think about in terms of our idea,
Exactly.
generating ideas. And that's, I'm glad you went there. Thank you very much for that. And that's the next category we're talking about is festivals. Mike and the vice mayor and I, we think that we need to develop a festival strategy. And maybe Mark's talked about it too. We talked about it on the tourism board, and maybe it's going to take. Mark thinks we're probably going to need to go outside to bring a, what do you call it, a contractor, Mark, or some kind of a
promoter, some type of promoter partnership, yes.
Yeah, that to where they would have an incentive to make the thing happen, but that would draw people to Surprise, and all of a sudden we'd be known for certain kinds of festivals. And
I had the opportunity to live in Northern California in a small town called Stockton, California. And Stockton, California had started with a concept about 10, 15 years ago. And it was what grew around Stockton, California was asparagus. And they came up with an asparagus festival. And this asparagus festival initially drew about 10,000. Now I think it's drawn about 750,000.
really,
They moved it from a regional park in between Lodi and Stockton. And
is it
now
like
they
a
have
4-day event, Rich, or what?
a 3 or 4 day event.
Is it
yes.
really?
And you can get asparagus cooked any which way you want it get cooked.
There's only two ways, though, isn't there?
You get any condiment, anything associated with that. But they had, the stagecoach rides, and they had all kinds of different venues, a car show, and you name it, it was there. But they started off with a concept, and they grew that concept. And what we need to do is to get out of the box, and you'll hear that more often from me today than ever before, but we need to get out of the box and figure out what it is that we can offer that is unique. Not necessarily unique to the city of Surprise, but unique that other people, other cities, other municipalities are not doing it.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then take it from there. Start slow, start small, and just work on it every year. Maybe initially it's a 1-day event, but it can grow into a 2 or 3 or 4 day event. That's what helps put our name on the map.
Yeah.
And especially if it's, and all the money that is generated goes to charity. So everybody benefits.
Cool.
Richard, that reminds me of city of Hillabin. They have a shrimp festival in the middle of the desert, which is
Who's this, right?
Hillabin.
Oh, Hillabin. Oh, really? Okay.
So that's something out of, they have to work in the middle of the desert, and you have a shrimp festival.
Right.
Well, one of the things you were talking about was whether it's a recreation area here where you want to bring the entertainment. I think we need something that's going to be here 10 months out of the year, 9 months out of the year, where it's a research center or a college town. So you'll have that traffic. You're going to have that traffic, which adds to the entertainment with the restaurants and what have you. And that'll probably come up on the education work on. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'll come up on the education.
These
But
are all
John, what do you
very
think?
interrelated. And so to have the college town or medical research or something else
Right.
really fits in with tourism.
Yes, it does. Absolutely. And what do you think, John? You've been pretty quiet there, bud.
Just listening and absorbing, thinking about Richard getting a pie in the face in his pieing contest. I don't disagree with any of this. I think they're all great ideas, but I have some cautious skepticism in that it does go back to, like Mark said, money, and how much do we want to invest? If this is a priority, great, let's make it a priority. But then we have to talk about resources, and we have to talk about those things. And what do we attract that other cities in our region don't have? I don't know what those things are, and I like all these things, but then I look at what Sharon passed around, and ultimately I think this is a good discussion, but I think more importantly is how do we get to there versus how do we build on surprise days? How do we get to there to make that happen so we don't have to invest a whole bunch of tax money to pay for those things. We can get creative and we can do those things, and I think those things go on a lot of times in the city. But how do we get to that, to make that happen? And that's my thought process. I mean, the fourth point, I think, is the most critical point, because those are amenities we currently have. That's tennis stadium application. Do we look at expanding that? Then you can have concerts in there. Then you can do those things in there. Whereas right now, we are limited in our capacity to do those things. So that's just my feeling. I think we do a lot of these things. I think the stuff, the events that go on, they are one event, and they continue to grow each year. And I go out every time we light up the Christmas tree, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And those are the types of things I think we're looking at there. I don't disagree with any of it. I just think that for this discussion, I want to know how we get that. I want to bring that here, and that's just where I'm at.
Good, I understand. I think we're all with you on that one, John. Seriously. The next area we talked about was resort and the white tanks, and we all felt like we got conference center under resort white tanks because we felt that was a nice marriage. Now, whether we need to talk about it. It's a question mark whether the conference center location should be there or should be near City Hall somewhere. I don't, but we thought that the resort really demanded a conference center because of the environment out there. We also talked about a possible casino, and Vice Mayor has got some connections with people who are in that business, and there's ways of doing it. There's a right way of doing it, and there's not such a right way of doing it. I mean, look at Glendale. So we want to be careful, but we don't want to throw it out. We want it to be on the table, and let's look at it and think about it, so we can make a good business decision. And then, also we talked about, which isn't up there, but I'm going to throw it out. We talked about having a developer come in, if we can put all the pieces together, that could develop a green resort that's solar powered, that's, name all the stuff. And there are green developers throughout the world. And we felt that was a priority, especially the way I think that Surprise is starting to position itself with Real Glass coming in as a solar manufacturer, and how our thought process is a lot about renewables and positioning Surprise as kind of a renewable city. So we thought that resort application of being green resort, it would be a very good idea. And I don't know if any of you guys have seen the boulders, but the white tanks out there, they deserve low-rise buildings. That's what we felt. Not some mammoth vertical building, but a low-rise development that was not a five-star, because five-star resorts aren't doing very well. Because companies have just taken five-star resorts off their travel list because they don't want their executives under scrutiny since the Wall Street problem and all the rest of it. Okay, so in talking a five-star resort, in fact, there are five-star resorts that are actually downgrading themselves to four-star resort so that they're on travel lists for companies. So that we need to keep that in consideration too. So that's, what does everybody think about that? I mean, it's state land. It's owned by the state, that land there on the north side, so that it takes a strategy to get there.
Skip, it was just in the newspapers not too long ago that, and the Glendale scenario keeps on unfolding.
Right.
And it was just brought up the other day in the paper that the mayor of Peoria is interested in having this casino as well, that they currently have. We have so much to offer. I believe that acreage is like 57 acres that is being considered for a casino in Glendale. We have a ton of land out here that is state lands. And state lands is open to the idea of of selling to an Indian nation for this possibility. Now, this, you got to take off your glasses and just kind of, in your mind, just kind of envision this thing, and that is that, wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice to have a resort, low profile, with a convention center, with boutique retail, with some restaurants, a convention center, a golf course. We've got some local people that are interested in building golf courses, some local professional people, and to make it a destination resort.
Yeah.
And then from that resort, have a little shuttle service going over to Prasada to visit the mall, back and forth. Play off of all of our amenities that are in the City of Surprise. Bring them downtown if we had one. Bring them down to City Hall. Bring them out to the recreational. So there's a lot of things that could happen if we just make a decision to go after them.
Right.
And what I'm doing at the present time is just I'm kind of feeling my way around the gaming industry and seeing what options are available and see who might be interested in talking and so forth. It's not a giveaway. The city will not be giving it away. We will be making money on anything that we do, making money, and that is to pay ourselves back.
Right.
And also facilitate bigger tax base and so forth. But
the other thing we talked about, Rich, too, was why surprise? Okay, if you talk about a resort, okay, why surprise just out of the clear blue? Well, because we're right next to the white tanks. It's in our planning area. Okay, Sharon talked about Interstate 11. Okay, to be right close to Interstate 11.
Right.
It's right between 303 and 11. Okay, it's plus you look at the West Valley. Where is there a resort? There's 1 million people in the West Valley. Wigwam.
Right.
Have you been to the Wigwam lately? It's kind of tired. Now, I know it's got new ownership, and they're going to be doing some things, but I talked to the ownership and asked them where they're going to start. They're not going to start in the rooms. They're going to start in the common areas. They're going to start investing in the common areas, making that look a little more spiffy. But the rooms are going to be challenging, in my opinion. So that's the only resort in the West Valley. There's 1 million people. I mean, everybody thinks about, when they think resorts, they think Scottsdale. They think East Valley. And the Super Bowl proved that out. I mean, people come to the Super Bowl and they all made reservations in Scottsdale and then drove over to Glendale. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Mark was just talking about, even for the tennis tournament here, we have people staying outside of town, no? Because we don't have the the hotel.
Right.
That's accurate. In the Super Bowl, I think the city of Glendale, they use the word magnet. They have magnets, but they don't have the magnets that bring them that tourism crowd. And there's different types of sporting events that bring that tourism crowd, and there's others that don't. I just looked at the South Lake. To me, it looks like a Prasada development, with no disrespect. It has that feel to me. So let me tell you about this magnet. It has, just quickly, it has 60 businesses, business services, Kinko's, cleaners. Those are magnets. People have to come there every day to buy, to shop.
Right.
Has 50 restaurants. 50 restaurants. Now, that's not a surprise village, okay? And it has 25 professional services, doctors and lawyers. That's magnets. That's magnetizing people to visit, giving them an incentive to visit the area. And, the Glendale project, I think we can learn from that. Our brothers to the east, or sisters to the east, I want to make sure I stay clear here. Our brothers and sisters to the east, they have an $850 million debt on the baseball complex and jobbing.com. And they're continuing to build that magnet. So all of this that we want to accomplish, I think it's great vision, and I think it's great, but it comes with a price tag.
Sure it does.
And I want to echo Councilman Williams. If it's one of our priorities, it works well. And it's interesting to hear the common theme as we go through this process, because the biggest, and Melissa's here and she can chime in if she likes, but when we survey our tennis tournaments and our Cactus League visitors, ingress and egress are the biggest complaints Second two, nothing to do in Surprise. And there's something wrong when a visitor from Scottsdale says, it took me longer to drive in and out of Surprise than it did to watch a 90-minute session watching Agassi take on Courier. Think about that. It took them longer to get in and out of Surprise from Northern Scottsdale than it did to watch a 90-minute tennis tournament. Would you come back? And so there's a lot of challenges here, and I'm really glad to hear us start to engage, because it really is starting to bring some things together, and it's starting to fit. Because the transportation piece is very important, long-term and short-term.
Right.
And then these magnets, Skip, that you're trying to talk about.
Right.
And, you know, it's interesting. I was asking Michael, happened to be a native of the Phoenix area, and Roy, you are as well, and many of you are here. Do you know what the Wigwam Hotel was really initially built for?
Goodyear executives, I think.
And it was known for its quality golf.
Right.
3 courses.
Right.
Only place in the Metro Phoenix area that had 3 golf courses. So you'd come and stay for 3 days, and you'd play 3 different courses. That was the magnet, and it worked. So you don't necessarily have to have the 60 businesses and the 50 professional lawyers, but you have to have that unique magnet.
That's right.
And I think you're hitting on it later in the economic development piece with the year-round entertainment structure. So I think we're on the right track. I just think that that's a magnet. I think we should continue to listen to the magnet, because the magnet will draw.
You know, the thing is that I was just thinking about that tennis tournament last year. Bullard was 2 lanes.
Right.
That was a zoo getting out of here. Now it's 4 lanes. So we need to really market that to people.
right.
Hey, we got 4
lanes now.
4 lanes. No, we're working on Greenway.
That
Greenway's
takes us-
still 2 lanes.
That takes us a block and a half. It really helps, that 90-minute
Along those lines, Civic Center Drive completion and Paradise would be huge. I think it would be a huge benefit for our tennis, but also to create something going on here in this square mile.
Yes, yes. Does anybody else want to talk? Mike, you want to say anything about the resort? Did you have any thoughts on the resort at the White Tanks?
No, I think you've expressed everything that
Okay.
we talked about.
And then the tennis stadium application is on here on this PowerPoint. I think what we're talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, is we're talking about using tennis stadium for more than tennis,
Yes.
right?
Right.
And
What
how
it
people-
does is creates a venue
Yeah.
whereby you can promote concerts, you can have educational seminars and so forth in a group, in an amphitheater type of environment.
Right.
Mark, we have done this tennis thing for 3 years, and I think it was 3 years, or this will have been the 3rd year. And I was very skeptical of the numbers and so forth, and you proved me wrong 3 years ago, or today, and for the last couple of years. Mark, and we've been renting stadia. We've been renting all the scaffolding and everything else for the temporary seating that takes place. How much a year do we spend for that? Just off the top of your head.
About $200,000, $250,000. We've actually run some numbers at your request
Per
on.
year, Melissa? Per year.
Yeah.
And our revenues are covering that cost, but we've run some numbers to see that if we made the investment
Right.
to build out the stadium for all the uses you're discussing this afternoon, could that $250 pay the debt service on a loan?
Oh, yeah.
Because it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, we're still selling tickets, but does the tickets go to debt, or does the ticket pay
Right.
the tent company who loves Surprise today?
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
I think and I think you're hearing loud and clear today is to let's look at the stadium, or look at the stadium concept for a center court, and let's see if it's cost effective. If so, then how do we do it? And how do we go about it? But if we're renting that equipment every year for $200,000 a year, that's $600,000 that we have expensed out over the last 3 years. And I can't imagine that it would cost a ton more, maybe double, to make a permanent facility, or maybe 3 or 4 times that. But I think it opens it up to a lot more money-making capability for the city?
No, I'm gonna be the fly in the ointment here, because I like the idea as well, but I want to look a little bit further and ask the question, is that the best location? Does that allow for adequate parking if we're going to be bringing people in? I want to, if we were going to make that investment, and in the past, I've been very pro tennis stadium, but now that we're sitting here talking about strategies, let's make sure we get the best strategies, and is that the best strategy? So I would probably like to see staff come back and say, okay, it would cost this much if we do it here at the tennis complex. We would have parking for this number of people, and we could do these kinds of events. Or option B is we move it to the west a little bit, and we do something a little bit different that allows us greater.
Like a multi-purpose facility?
Right.
Uh-huh. Okay. Well, that was the other thing we talked about. You got in the tourism board. Robert Paisley's here. He's on the board. They talked about originally putting an amphitheater at the White Tanks. That's what they talked about. Remember, Mark? Having the amphitheater out there near that resort. So, but
And Councilmember Hall, just so that I can, for the record, state, because R.J. Carden is the Parks and Rec Director for Maricopa County, and I want to just state for the record, since we're on TV, that R.J., if you get this tape, we're not talking about building at the base of the White Tanks. We're talking about building in the proximity of the White Tanks, because we don't have your permission to use your land. And we want to make sure that Max Wilson and everyone knows we're not making assumptions. That being said, the amphitheater is actually still an opportunity to be built in conjunction with their library and their outdoor conservatory. So, I mean, it is an option. Land probably being very, very appealing, but the opportunity then to partner with the White Tank area and to build a unique, what you kind of would say, a concert in the rocks, if you will.
Yes.
Or
yes.
concert in the tanks. I mean, whatever it would be. But that's a real opportunity and a real scenario that I think would be an inexpensive venture, because you would be able to partner with their existing infrastructure.
Exactly.
And that conservatory and that library would be a magnet. It's going to be a magnet the way it's going to be built. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's another thought that we need to take a look at, right, Mark?
yes, sir.
And
There's also, and I don't disagree with that, I think that's a great idea, but if we build out the tennis center with permanent stadium seating,
right.
and that gives us, and Mark, you and I have talked about this, it gives us an opportunity to bring in, I can't remember what you call them, I think B-class entertainment. They're not the top dollar ones, but they're the ones that will bring in a crowd to fill that stadium for 5,000 or 6,000 people. We're not going to get, I don't know who's the top stars anymore, but we'll get some of the, some of our people.
Right.
Our age, some of the people.
The Statler brothers and, whatever.
Councilmember Hall and Councilmember Alton, you hit on something with the tennis, and I have to tell you, I was not a supporter of that when Councilman Johnson brought it to us, because it replaced an 8-field softball complex, and I thought that we could really enhance our senior softball tournament opportunities and tournament softball opportunities. But that's a great example of and now I'm a believer, even though it's a lot of hard work, and Melissa says we work harder for tennis every year than we do for spring training, and it only lasts 4 days.
Is that right?
Well, it's because of the requirement for 100% of revenue recovery. If you ask Melissa to recover $4.5 million during spring training, she would tell you she's going to work harder on that project, probably more than tennis.
Yeah.
But that being said, what tennis has done for you is put us in a unique position, not only in Arizona or in the western part of our city, but it's put us in a very specialized area in the western part of the United States in the Southwest. And you have partners like the United States Tennis Association out of New York City willing to partner to help you expand if you make the commitment to make this the state-of-the-art, one of the top 10 public facilities in America, like Cary, North Carolina. And there are models that work, but people will step up if you step up. And I think the return is probably 10 to 1. And I think Robert behind you, our good friend with the Hotel Association, would tell you, not only do his cash registers know, but the streets and the lobbies know when a tennis tournament is in town.
Right.
And in October, we're full, and every weekend we will have at least 500 guests here from throughout the United States. And the Magnet is a tennis facility because they have to play 4 days here. They can't go anywhere, and they're going to stay, they're going to eat here, and they're going to play here, and then they're going to leave here. But that is the tennis facility is the Magnet for sports tourism. And so that's a great example of something that works for really a small investment at the end of the day. We're not paying debt service on that. I mean, it's paid, and I think it pays us back every day.
Yeah, and I think on the tourism board put down as a timeline 1 to 3 years,
That's right.
right?
That's correct.
So, and they also put on a timeline of 12 months for the festivals.
The festival piece is something that we'll RFP in the next 12 months.
Okay.
And we'll look for a promoter and add incentives that bring them to Surprise. And we'll try and be unique. Maybe it's the Guacamole Festival or the Garlic Festival or something to that
Yeah.
strange. But it'll be a magnet. It had to be unique because the uniqueness will be the magnet.
Next slide, Jeff, yeah. The next area we talked about was a conference center. This was just talked about, and we wanted to talk about with you guys. Is there a value in having a conference center near City Hall? Or the city center, so to speak, and part of a full-service hotel development. That was what it was talked about. Now, right now we have, every property we have in the city of Surprise, we have 715 rooms, I think. Don't we, Robert? 715 rooms? Yeah. They're all limited service rooms. We don't have a full-service hotel in the city of Surprise. So
Not only that, we have the rooms, but we don't have a large conference.
meeting space, yes, exactly. I think the Hampton Inn I think it's got the biggest, and I think it peaks out at 50 people in their meeting room. Isn't it 50, Robert? Something like that. Anyway, but so that was, we don't need to talk about that a long time. It's just something that's going to evolve, but whether or not a conference center is, if that's the right place to have it as near city center, we need to discuss that.
Conference center needs support from hotels, and currently that would be problematic because of deed restrictions. And this probably isn't the time to go into discussions with anybody about that because of the EIS process that's
Right.
taking place with the F-35. I think this would be a great area for a conference center and
Okay.
accompanying hotels.
How is Glendale handling the League of Cities? Is the Marriott going to be the main conference center and it accommodates everyone there?
The league is at the Renaissance.
The Renaissance.
Renaissance, I'm sorry, yeah. So the Renaissance is big enough to handle the League of Cities conference?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's a big
it's quite large.
It's quite large.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, that's a whole nother part of this discussion is that, just what you said, is the deed restriction. And I mean, we have a lot of land right out here in front of City Hall that people ask me about all the time. I'm sure they ask all of you about it too. What's going on?
Again, if we focus our attention and we say this is where we want it, then we have to go and do those things to get it.
Yeah.
So, we have to make a decision. Do we want it near the city center? If that's where we want it, then let's do the things that are necessary to do it. But, if we just keep hemming and hawing around, it's not going to happen.
Right.
One of the things with having a conference center near the city center, if that ends up, as we discussed previously, as an entertainment center also, the two kind of go together. Because who wants to go to a conference center that is 3 miles or 4 miles away from all the restaurants, all the bars, where all the action is?
Right.
You don't.
Good point.
So, the conference center that we discussed earlier near the White Tanks, that's a different concept than one that might be a smaller conference center downtown. So if that's what we want, that's what this whole thing is about, I think. If that's what we want, we have to determine what we want and implement the steps to get it. If we don't, we're just still going to be here 3 years from now.
Right.
Mayor?
Councilmember Hall? Oh, excuse me, Ray, go ahead.
Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the Mayor, you mentioned restrictions, and I'm aware of these. Is there a way that we're going to be able to lift these
There
restrictions?
may be, but, I'd really recommend we move away from that discussion right now and just let the EIS process take its place, and there will be a time when this discussion will be fully appropriate.
Okay.
Councilmember Hall, just to update the mayor and the council, and the mayor was accurate, Surprise Village is actually zoned for a third hotel, and the owner of that property has approached the city on several occasions on partnering with a potential conference center next to a boutique hotel. And I can tell you that if you took a poll of the two existing hotels, the Marriott and the Holiday Inn Express, they would probably support that. And that could be the magnet to get a couple more restaurants to build there quickly. Because this infrastructure is in place, there's investments in place, not to say that surrounding areas aren't as more viable and possibly more productive in the long term. But there are some opportunities today, and I think we should probably take heed on the experiences we all were able to take part of with Rio Glass. We can do anything if we're willing to step up to the plate.
Right.
And anything's possible.
Yes, exactly. Good point, Mark. The next area I want to talk about is the partnerships. Well, I'll just talk about these focus areas here. These were areas that we talked about. We don't need to spend a lot of time on them, but we thought our website, and Lynch does a great job on our website. We got a great website, but we think that it can be a better website for tourism. We think that, and Councilman Williams brought up a very good point to me one day. He says, hey, I took the family up to Payson. God, it was so easy going on their website, finding out what to do and where to stay. Remember, John? And so we looked at it, and it was very easy. Right now, you go on our website, and you kind of got to back into tourism a little bit as to where to stay and what's going on. You can go on events, and it lists the events, but it's all for citizens of Surprise. In other words, the softball or tots or whatever it is that you can sign up for. But if you're an outsider, if you're from Southern California and you want to come to Surprise and you look at what's going on in Surprise, it's pretty weak. And so we think we need to really, we need to enhance our website to accommodate tourism. The second thing we talked about was the Arizona Office of Tourism Roadshow. They're going to do 4 more roadshows this year. I asked them if they would please come to Surprise. And what that would mean is the Arizona Office of Tourism would present to us and to the residents of Surprise what they're doing on a national level to promote the state of Arizona, okay, and what's going on in Arizona. In flip of that, they would ask us to present to them, what are we doing in Surprise? What's going on in Surprise? And I thought that would be a very good time to talk about our, and we agreed, that it would be a good time to talk about our 50th anniversary and how we can make that quite an event, and the Office of Tourism could help us, and also that we could help the state with the centennial, because remember the centennial of the state is 2012, February 14th, 2012. So it's only 15 months from our celebration. So if they could come out and they could start piquing people's interest in terms of the centennial and be part of our event. Anyway, that was what that was about. And then social media. The social media part of this is way over my head because I'm not a high-tech guy, but I'll tell you what, when I went to that conference in Tucson, the hotel restaurant people are all over this. I mean, the social media in restaurants has gone like, you can't believe. You know, people, Starbucks is signed up on a thing called Four Corners, which is the F there. So any Starbucks you go into, if you're on Four Corners, it says, hey, welcome, Skip. If you buy a cup of coffee today, you can get a roll too. They know you're there. On your telephone. Right on your phone. And if you're a frequent guest, it'll make you the mayor of the restaurant. So now you're the mayor of the restaurant. What kind of special do you want to have? You know, this kind of stuff. It's huge. And it's skewed younger, okay? It's the young people that are doing this, but hey, they travel too. And I'm just wondering what role social media could play in terms of tracking customers at our tennis stadium, tracking customers that come to the baseball, and how we could use that to build a tourism base. I don't know. People smarter than me can figure it out, but I thought we ought to talk about it and be part of social media. So, and the Vice Mayor and Mike agreed. So, anyway, that's funding strategies. Let's talk about that for a minute. As you guys know, we increased the bed tax 1.52%, and that 1.52% is totally dedicated to tourism. I think the Tourism Board made the decision, not that I agreed with it, but it's their board. They're going to wait till January to discuss funding. Right, Mark?
That's accurate. And this bed tax will from our projections coming from finance, will probably generate about $100,000 this year.
Okay. I was told that March, April, May generate 54,000.
That's correct.
Is that correct? Okay. So yeah, so we're on track to be over 100,000, and then that, I think it's going to be on a bid basis as to people come before the board and say, listen, we got an idea to build tourism in the city of Surprise. Here's our idea. We need funding from you to help us, and blah, 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 okay? And it'll eventually come to city council. Also, we talked about grants and possible bond, a very targeted bond, and then private-public partnerships. Those are the strategies for funding. And that's all I got.
Okay, one of the things that may have been touched on a little bit that I'd like to talk about is talking about our existing assets besides, okay, we've got the stadium.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We've got the tennis center.
Good. Yeah.
We've got Speed World out here.
Yes.
We've got the White Tanks. We've got, well, it's not in Surprise, we've got the World Wildlife Zoo, which is directly south of us, and really much closer to Surprise than to Glendale, because it's in Glendale's planning area. And that's a very good zoo with the
Yes, it is.
aquarium. And so maybe we can find some ways to partner there, where we partner in an event, and then people come to Surprise to stay here and take the short trip, the shortest trip, by the way, from Surprise to the Wildlife Center.
Right.
Also, let's not forget we have City Hall. Richard was involved in the Valley Fever Conference, and that was, can you speak to that just a little bit?
Sure. I've never seen a capacity. I don't know how much this holds in here, but it's about 150, 125, 150. We were standing room only.
178.
178. We were standing room only in this facility. What it was an opportunity for some doctors to come together, and like a symposium. And I was asked only because I was a recipient of the Valley Fever, and so they wanted to have a person that had it, just a normal citizen. I guess I was pretty normal at that time, to talk about the effects of Valley Fever and whatnot. But it was sponsored by TGen and a few other folks, and I can't remember their names offhand. But these type of events are very educational for our citizens. It's an opportunity to get the word out. It may not pertain to everybody that lives here in Surprise or anywhere else in the valley, but I think we could avail this facility to things of that nature. Symposiums, to bring doctors in from all over the United States and the world, and have these group discussions.
I agree.
And especially with our capability of televising. They televised that Valley Fever event not only for our channel 11, but the doctors took copies of the tapes as well.
Right.
So it was a very worthwhile event. And,
I totally agree. And I had the opportunity to go to that dinner, Rich.
Yes.
And the doctors that I had dinner with were from Fresno, Bakersfield. I think it was a doctor from Stockton, because that's where Valley Fever started, was San Joaquin Valley. And they were so impressed with the city of Surprise, and they didn't even know where Surprise was before this conference. Where is Surprise? You know, they knew it was near Phoenix somewhere, but they were so impressed with the facilities. They had, the dinner was down at Marley Park. The van took them down there. It was so well done, and so we did a great job, and we really won some friends. So I agree. I think there's an opportunity there to build on that.
And see how this is beginning to really become intertwined is, you know, we're talking about transportation, now we're talking about tourism, now we're talking about an event that probably is going to be covered maybe under quality of life.
Right.
Sustainability is that whole health and wellness
Exactly.
thing. So this is really a valuable discussion.
You know what, to your point, if I could hit on it just real quick, Lynn, is we need to package Surprise. Just because something is just outside our city limits does not mean we can't package it. Right. The zoo is a very good example. Speed World is another example. It's not in the city of Surprise, it's in the county, but it's part of Surprise. So if you're staying in Surprise and you say, okay, now what is there to do? John's with his, you know, like a family of John's. Well, okay, now what do I do? I went to the game. Well, you can go to the zoo. Hey, Speed World's got, do you like car racing or motocross or whatever? That's only 9 miles away. You like boating, Lake Pleasant? There's a restaurant out there. So I totally agree, and I think the web page can be part of that communication. So that if you're shopping from, you know, Dallas or Las Vegas, and you go, what is there to do in Surprise? That our web page will accommodate that. Oh, there's a zoo only 5 miles away. Well, that's cool, with an aquarium and, you know, with pictures and total.
And probably
that's an asset.
Yeah, right. And probably the best example of that is white tanks. We've talked all
There's
around
another
it
one.
today. The white tanks are not in Surprise. Okay, they never will be. Okay, but we could create the gateway to the white tanks.
That's right.
And we because nobody has taken ownership of the white tanks at this point. Okay,
Right.
it's just out there in the county. Okay, well, Sharon has. Okay. So it's our opportunity to create a visitor center maybe around the white tank, you know, as an entryway to the white tanks, or create something that gives us the recognized ownership for the white tanks.
Right.
And so
I agree. And that's part of making, you know, making the tourism statement. Mark has said this so many times, and I totally agree with you. Okay, I come to Surprise and watch a baseball game. Now what do I do? We're asking that rhetorically, as a family or husband and wife. Now what do we do? Where do we go? Is there anything else to do? You know, and we only have 8% of the people that go to the baseball games stay in Surprise. Where do they stay? A lot of them stay in Peoria. Why? Because they have an entertainment district.
okay, so can you help me understand what the long-term goals would be for tourism, and then I think we're talking right now, we've been talking more about the more immediate strategies, things that we can do through these partnerships.
Right.
And so if we're doing that poster that has our goals with the underlying strategies,
Right.
what would that look like?
Okay. Some of the immediate is the festivals.
Partnerships will be festival?
Uh-huh. Another one, 1 to 2 years. Now I'm going off of what the tourism board, because the tourism board went through a lot of brain strategy on this. So I think that we ought to align ourselves with some of their thinking, because they're in the industry, and we appointed them to a board, and they're not compensated, yet they gave us a lot of brain power. They would like to see a conference center within 1 to 2 years.
Conference or a convention?
Conference.
Conference is smaller than a
Yes.
convention?
Yes. Yes. Their timeline on the tennis stadium application was 1 to 3 years.
Okay.
Okay. The entertainment district was 1 to 4 years.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And the resort at the White Tanks was 3 to 5. So Now, the website and all the rest of this, the miscellaneous stuff, that could be right away.
Right away.
We could work, we
begin
could start
working
working
on
on that right away.
So what does that look like when we're defining it as a strategy? Do we want to say, continue to seek out partnerships that will bring visitors to Surprise through a series of like events,
Festivals.
seminars, or
Right.
symposiums, something like that?
Right. That would, yeah, that's good. Let's see, what,
Councilmember Hall, maybe I can help you as well on the tourism piece. Some of the things that can be happening today that really won't cost us any money but can enhance the tourism piece. If you recall, one of the goals was 365 Surprise.
Right.
Exactly going back to what you were talking about. What's going on in Surprise and the surrounding areas, so that if I'm staying in Surprise, if I'm in one of those hotels, I can go onto a website or I can go to a brochure, and this is what's going on in Surprise, whether it's the zoo, whether it's a festival, an Oktoberfest at Sun City Grand that no one will really know about unless they've had an information piece. And I'm not sure Sun City Grand's looking for tourists in their community, but but that would be an activity. And then something that you're suggesting is for us to join the Glendale CVB.
right.
So that we have more of a Western regional presence to join them and participate in their promotions of PIR in the Southwest Valley, and the Super Bowl, and the BCS games.
Right.
And equally, they promote then tennis, and they promote spring training. So those are a couple of things
That could be
today.
that could be right away.
Yeah, those are going to happen, and we're not going to have to come to the mayor and ask out of his contingency fund for any assistance. Okay?
Right.
But so those are things we can do today with no cost.
Yeah, good point, Mark. Then, the extension of current activities, that could be right away in terms of thinking about it, what we could do to extend current activities in any way. And like Mark said, that may have a small impact in terms of tourism, but if I don't know about you guys, but when my family comes to Surprise, I show them around Surprise, and I like to eat in the restaurants in Surprise. I like them to stay in hotels in Surprise. But eventually, we go to Westgate. After about 2 days in Surprise, we're down to Westgate, or we're over into Scottsdale. I'm just being honest, okay? And so if there's a way to, through extension of current activities, if people are in town visiting, if it gives them another reason to stay another half a day in Surprise or an overnight in Surprise, then we're ahead of the game. Because remember, you guys, here's the thing. Lodging tax is very high margin dollars. We don't have to give a lot of service. They don't tax the service of the city. Okay? They're high margin dollars. So the more that we can help fill these hotel rooms in the city of Surprise, the better off we are as a city. Plus, we're going to get more hotel development as a consequence. So I won't give you that. That's enough of that speech. But what else, Lynn? We need to hit on anything more?
I'm just from the recreation standpoint of it, and we have again going back to current resources that we have, and how do we expand on that? And soccer season's coming, and my kids are going to be out there, and there's going to be 1,000 parents out there with their kids, and that's when we go out, and that's when we do things, and then expanding that beyond that to look at competitive athletics. The club soccers that go on all year round, a club soccer tournament, if you talk about a magnet and sustaining something over a long period of time, not necessarily tourism, but driving traffic, these are things that just go out there on a Saturday in September, October, and you'll see it. And I'll talk to parents all the time. And when can I bring my kid to Surprise to play club soccer and be competitive and do those types of things? Those are things in the long term, I think, that we can look at that can even benefit our interscholastic athletics when these kids move on to high schools.
I agree.
In the Dysart community and beyond. So that and building on what we have with the Rangers, with the Royals,
that would work
and all those things.
But that is a part of tourism, John. It's just like what Mark's done with the stadium in terms of building baseball tournaments for these high school kids and whatever that come here from Albuquerque and San Diego and whatever. Well, they're not going to drive from San Diego and play a baseball game and drive back. They're going to stay here.
They're going to stay here, and they do. We have those things, and I just want to emphasize this, and Mark and Melissa know this. We have these things going on all the time.
Yep.
We have high school playoffs. We have those things going on in this city, and we utilize the resources we have. But if we're looking long term and how can we expand it, make it bigger, better, continually improve, I think that's one of the things that we do lack.
Yeah.
I think you cannot, you shouldn't underestimate the power of soccer. It is a huge draw. It's a
Yeah.
huge
So
draw.
maybe that's a missing piece in this.
I could very well be. And I back in Minnesota, we had the Blaine National Sports Center. And literally, they had international tournaments. And their staff spent the entire year traveling around the world, bringing in teams for these tournaments. And I want to tell you, it was so popular, and it was had such a huge impact on the state of Minnesota's economy that it was supported and underwritten by the legislature. It's a huge deal. So
Is
soccer
that, Mark,
is very,
what do
very
you
big.
think? What do you think on this soccer? Do we need to weigh in and be a soccer capital?
Well, Mr. Hall and Ms. Wolcott, I grew up a baseball guy, so it was hard for me to figure out that big round ball and that little ball that's a tennis ball. Now it's a soccer. But I am becoming a believer. And again, this is all coming together, and I'm glad this dialogue is happening because we actually are having discussions. It's already been reported in the paper with the Kansas City Wizards, which is a Major League Soccer team, wanting to bring their training facilities here at really a way, at a much less investment that it took us to get two Major League Baseball teams. But the benefit to that would be that you have a Major League Soccer team here in our city. Its presence would draw into hopefully that enthusiasm and that buzz about soccer. We're getting ready to talk about an education process here, higher education. You could recruit a college that would love to be a part of a campus that has state-of-the-art baseball facilities, state-of-the-art tennis facilities, state-of-the-art soccer facilities that could turn into lacrosse facilities. And then soccer facilities, the turf area could turn into your major festival area.
Right.
So this all fits in together.
Right.
And I think this process is very valuable to staff because there's some creative people here. I really enjoy working with Jeff because he thinks outside the box, as many do in this organization. But there is a lack of soccer facilities in the West Valley. There is a smaller facility in the southwest part off the 101 that is really, it's not funded yet, but there's a potential for us to be that focus of, hey, there's soccer here, and club sports is huge.
So how do we articulate this in this retreat right now? Because I think that's something that needs to be part of what we need to talk about. If there's a void in the market, and we think we can build on it, just like John was talking about.
I think at the end of the day, when we get done with all of this, and staff comes back to you, that we articulate to you, and then in this regard, this is tourism, but you would say that you would like to focus and prioritize sports tourism.
Yes.
And how do we take it to the next level?
Yes.
What are we doing today? And I can tell you that Robert would agree, in the hottest months of the year, June and July, the hotels are much more at capacity than they would be if we weren't bringing the teams in from all over the country. But how do we do that with other sports to become a niche?
Right.
And then maybe complement higher education. And then maybe jumpstart some of this transportation issue as a priority because we want to really improve our ingress and egress. So I think at the end of the day, sports tourism has a lot of potential, and then you'll just have to take that lead and say we want to make that a priority so that we can make that an economic impact in our community.
What do you guys think?
I would agree with that, but a couple of things. One is that much of this plays directly to recreational services, but some of it doesn't. For an example, the symposiums, the health issues, and so forth. And so I have a couple of questions that don't have to be answered tonight, but of staff, and that would be, how do you see us being able to integrate some of these other things that aren't going to be directly assigned to recreational services? Because I see several departments that would be involved here. One is, as always, finance. How do we figure out what money do we need? How do we figure out economic development? Certainly is part of it. Communications is part of it, and of course recreational services. So, if any of your departments, we'll exclude you, Scott, because you're way over there. But if you have comments now or thoughts that you want to add to this discussion, this would be the time to put them out.
Mayor Truitt, if I could just remind you what we're thinking with process. Today and it's been a fantastic discussion, so many notes and so many ideas exchanged. Our goal today is to try to get through either the 5 topic areas or at least 3. I think we're probably running out of time. But to get the bulleted list together, and then we're going to do exactly what you're suggesting. We're going to take it back, and Mark and Scott and Bob, myself, and other affected department heads are going to come up with what we think are recommended funding strategies for these things. In other words, we're going to try to put price tags on it, or at least say, we're not prepared to answer, but the first step in the strategy is to do a cost-benefit analysis to come back with you. And then we're going to bring it to you and say, here's what we think it'll cost, here's what we think the potential returns are. Now help us prioritize these things. That's where Councilman Williams was going before.
Right.
And then we test it with residents and then move forward. So there is going to be a whole nother session as part of this strategic plan development process that puts price tags on it. We're getting lower and lower, which is where we want to be, but we need a little bit more time to analyze the financial impacts.
Okay, and you know what, Scott McCarty, maybe, I know your day is coming because a lot of these, this discussion has to do with some of the strategies we're asking you to put together. But if you feel at some point it's appropriate to enter into a discussion this evening, feel free to come down, get a little closer, and be able to do that, because we do want to hear from our department heads who we recognize as the ones who's going to take us to where we want to get. So, and same thing, Ken, if you've got 2 cents that you want to put in on any of this. Nickel. Okay, so I just want to make it real clear that you're invited into this conversation for clarification or for input. We welcome that.
Yeah.
So,
John, how do you feel about what Jeff just said?
Yeah, I'm glad he brought it up because that's what I was going to ask. What's the next step? This is a great discussion. It's almost a brainstorming discussion, and we're coming up with this master list. Okay, now put it in place, and what does that visually look like? And give me the visuals too. Here's what you guys discussed. Here's what that would look like right here at City Center. I'd like to see that. And that's where you get, we talked before about some of the financing. That's when you get the buy-in from the community, when you're talking about this is all nice talk, but ultimately here's the plan and here it is on paper. And then the community goes, oh, okay, yeah, that's not a bad idea. Let's do that.
Right.
I think there's probably 3 of us sitting at this table that remember back to the concept of our downtown, our city center, and that would be Roy, Lynn, and myself. We're probably the only ones that were.
I see 1 or 2 people in the audience.
Mark was here. But that's what we need. The first time I saw that, I was in. Yeah, how soon can you build that? Because it portrayed, it pictured exactly what we'd all been talking about. That's what John's talking about. Mm-hmm. Let's give them a true idea of what it could look like. Right. Not that it will, and we know that one's down the road now, but the possibility.
No, it'll look like that.
Yeah, that's good. Appreciate that. Is there any other discussion on tourism? Because this has been a great discussion.
Mayor, if I may just, I'd like to keep an open mind to the location of any such development.
Right.
I mean, the city center is a great opportunity that makes sense to invest, but we have other partners as well in this city. The Prasada developments, we have other development, we have the Future 303. So, we should maximize our opportunities to leverage our investments.
Right.
And what we haven't done well in Surprise is we take one option and we take that step over the line without exploring all of the options that brings the best value with what I call real partnership. Not the city stepping up and opening up its checkbook, but someone else stepping up and sharing the cost for the end result of profit. And so I'm glad to hear this, but I think staff would all agree we'd like to look at options, especially the planner here, because if he had some options that would bring success to Surprise with other developments in the city and other areas that are open, I think leverage would be something that we could maximize. Am I accurate there?
I agree. It's just anytime we can create a competitive environment and not really focusing on one piece of property, the better. It just creates, leverage. It creates opportunity. It also creates what we're talking about a lot today, and that's just being out of the box. So I completely agree.
And I
sure
think
that-
this goes back to what we talked about when we started talking about transportation and looking at those lines on the map and saying, these are not written in stone. We need to investigate the options. We need to look at
Right.
all of our options before we start prioritizing which road we need to build first, because we need to know where we're going to start investing in some of these economic development opportunities before we can make that priority list.
Right, great. Okay, we're going to take a 20 to 30-minute dinner break, and I would ask that council and staff go, it's going to be in the overflow room, get your meal right away, because then after that, give us 10 minutes, and there should be extra food. I would invite everybody, residents that have come to listen to this, to come in and have a bite to eat with us. But we want the council and staff to go ahead and get your meals, and then we'll see what we have left over. This meeting is temporary adjourned. Okay, I'm calling this retreat back into session, and I believe we're going to be starting off with economic development. Vice Mayor Alton is taking the lead on that, and along with the Vice Mayor on economic development was myself and Skip Hall.
Okay. We'll go ahead and start, and then somebody can bring Roy up to speed when he gets here. It was a great opportunity to spend some quality time with the mayor and Skip Hall, and actually just brainstorming, and that's what this is all about. This session is to be able to discuss things that we normally don't discuss because we are so darn worried about the open meeting law that we don't even talk to each other. So this is some great dialogue. This is an opportunity for us all to get on the same page and then have staff be on the same pages with us. So with that, let's proceed. What I did is I initially, when I was putting this into a format, and that is to talk about our major long-term goals and health and medical research. We have a natural here, and the natural is the senior citizen population that we have, and then with the baby boomers coming along, we stand to really prosper from the senior community in a way that is going to bring about more medical, more research that has to do with all the problems we have as we grow old, and I'm certainly getting those as well. It's an opportunity to bring everything together. We have the wherewithal, we have the land, we have the vision possibly of bringing this to fruition. Renewable resources, and we're going to go into each one of these in more detail. Manufacturing and distribution, education, general and medical, and as was discussed by the mayor earlier, everything that we talk about is probably interlinked to some other areas that we all have represented here today. And then family quality of life and the amenities that we need to bring forward to promote economic development. Recreational opportunities we'll certainly talk about in more detail. Healthcare and medical research, as was brought up by Councilwoman Walcott some council meetings ago, is that what we're seeing in today's economic environment, and that is that we can't afford to send our children back east to college. The dollars that are available in each family's budgets are shrinking and shrinking. And so why not bring a healthcare college or a general education college from the East Coast here to the West? And it would make it more viable for everyone to get a quality education rather than not or passing up that opportunity and not going to the East Coast. So there are things that we can look into. And I just read in the paper just the other day that we're losing our doctors that are training here are leaving and going elsewhere.
That's right.
And
so,
why is that, Richard?
I don't know. Tell me, Sharon, why that is.
Because we're not investing
Right.
in medical education.
Right.
And the state is not investing. We're cutting as a state.
Yeah,
our
we're not
medical schools.
taking them on as not residents, but
Well,
interns.
the
and
residency
stuff.
program is collapsing.
Yeah, that's it. The residency program.
So this, this might be something we want to research a little bit more. And then, again, contacting Eastern colleges, we have to make a concerted effort to do that. We just can't wait here and wait for somebody to contact us. I think we need to send an RFP out or make some kind of contact with these college campuses back east to see if anyone would be interested in locating here. Mm-hmm. Surprise, in Sun Cities is the largest cluster of retired citizens or residents. And I heard that just not too long ago. The demographics are such that in a concentrated area, there's no greater concentration than what we have currently within our area. And so what an opportunity for research. I know as trials are put out into the market, they don't necessarily have trials in the same town, medical trials, as they are developed. However, we're going to have more and more seniors moving here as a result of the baby boomers now starting to retire, starting to take care of senior members and so forth. And of course, we already have the biggest cluster. So I think we have a lot to offer. I think we can go after that big time. Medical specialists, that would even include sports medicine. Why not make a niche for ourselves and go after it? But this is all subjects that are for thought and possible research. Yes.
We talked earlier about the Valley Fever Conference. There is room for medical tourism.
Yeah.
For people coming in
Absolutely.
for treatments, for that kind of thing, and that should be something that we'd be looking at as
Yes.
well.
And I believe, Mike, you can help me out, but if you go to Cancer Centers of America for treatment, it's a prolonged treatment period. And,
Oh, yeah.
and people are having to stay locally in order to receive this treatment. And yes, the Cancer Center of America has opportunities in place which to house people or set up affordable housing for them.
Actually, they have housing available there.
Right.
If you're there, but as a volunteer, I've met people that actually are renting houses in Surprise or staying with family in Surprise.
Right.
Because the CTCA has a shuttle service that will pick you up and take you in. There's a wonderful opportunity.
And then I believe Loma Linda has a program as well for accelerated radiation that requires people to stay there for a very long time. So it's a niche that we can attract possibly that is not available here in the Valley, and to find something that would bring in actual economic development for our city.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions? And then, of course, prepare an RFP and just get it out. Let people know. And I think that's what we need to do more of as a city staff and city council and mayor, is that we got to let people know who we are and what we want. Because you're never going to get anything you haven't asked for.
Right.
It's never going to get dumped in your lap.
Didn't we find out during all this, Rich, that is it Midwestern, the medical school in
Glendale?
Is it Glendale? Aren't they turning out more doctors than University of Arizona? Was that what we found out?
Yeah, I believe so.
I think
that's pretty good.
Do you know that,
Podiatry
John?
program there. They have it's expansive. It's not strictly a medical school, but there's a physician's assistant program. It's a combination of occupational therapy. Huge school, a big influence in a lot of where our kids are going to go. And Councilman Walcott alluded to the fact that choices are limited in healthcare and education.
Any other suggestions and/or comments?
And what about one of the things that you and I and Lynn talked about too was right in our backyard we've got this research center just down Grand Avenue at 103rd and Grand called Sun Health Research Institute. But listen, I have not been through it.
I have not.
I need to go through it. You know what I'm saying? And it's state of the art. Well, let's see. How do I want to put this? From what I understand, Parkinson's and Alzheimer, they're one of the forefronts of research. Is that correct, Sharon?
That's what I've heard.
And back to about the older population. I mean, I don't know what the percentages are of us getting Alzheimer, but I think it's pretty high.
Oh yeah.
There's been some preliminary casual discussions with Sun Health Banner about maybe partnering with the City of Surprise in a health and wellness effort. Is, yes, they want to treat those who have ailments,
Right.
but wouldn't it be great if they could treat treat folks before they have the ailments to avoid those ailments or prolong their health as much as possible. So I think that fits into this whole picture that we're talking about tonight is we need to have maybe formalize some of those discussions, bring in some folks,
Yes.
and talk about what it would look like and how we can be a model community.
Yes, yes.
Richard?
Yes.
You mentioned about getting this information out to the public. We do, I think, a pretty good job. Is there other things that you see that we could help out in this respect?
Well, I'm not sure. Having never gone after this niche or this healthcare and medical research, having been a banker, it's always been for businesses and retail and manufacturing and all that. But there has to be some kind of a mechanism that is out there that will put us in touch with the education
I
community.
agree.
Well,
That there has to be an association that we can go visit their
Right.
conferences or do something in order to get the word out. Yes, Mayor.
I agree with you, Richard. And one of the things that we can do is we can give staff some direction is to put out some RFPs.
Yes.
And see what we can get in certain areas. So we can have this wonderful discussion, build some great strategies, but if nobody takes any action, then we can have this, we'll do this again next year.
Right.
Okay, so we don't want to do this again next year. We want to refine next year what we've started this year, and that means we're going to have to get out there and make ourselves known to a lot of different groups, and that is going to be wherever council goes. That's going to be our job, and it's going to be a direction we're going to give staff, and within their spheres of influence, economic development, public works, finance, recreational services, and everything else is to look for, be open to bringing back ideas. Right. And we have not yet asked them to do that, as far as I know, and so now we're asking them, is please bring us back ideas that may fit into these strategies.
In my estimation, the City of Surprise needs to get out of the box. Yeah, that's a great term. But we have to take our blinders off and look for ways in which to do business that we've never done before. That is not typical of a municipality. So I think that we just have to
Actually,
work
Richard,
together.
I disagree. It is actually typical of most municipalities. They do reach out. It's not typical for us, and we need to get in the game.
Yeah.
And that's really important that we reach out and we connect with people. Like you said, if you don't ask, you don't get.
Right.
And if you aren't willing to reach out and talk to your neighbors and go to conferences and meet with contacts and develop and nurture those contacts, we're cutting off our nose to spite our face.
Correct.
So I think it's,
But, it seems like we should be able to grade ourselves, come back in 4 months or 6 months or whatever, and see where we're at or what we have accomplished.
Yeah.
Right.
And maybe I shouldn't say this in a public meeting, but who knows, maybe University of Arizona wants a satellite campus. They might be having a strategy meeting right now about where are we going to go in the state of Arizona that complements what we're doing existing. Who knows?
We certainly should check our backyard first before we go out, and that's a great idea, Skip. We have to let them know, and I believe there's some dialogue that's already been done. And it's more economical for them, certainly. But I got to think that there is a market out there that we can reach out and get. I mean, some of these universities are swimming in money, and they're looking for a greater enrollment and not just an online education, but one that is you're actually sitting in the seats in a classroom.
Right.
So.
Right.
Vice Mayor Alden? And I know this doesn't need to be said again, but just to reinforce, and I think Councilman Villanueva has said this many times, staff could be given direction, but that success can only be on the positive side if they're given the tools.
Yes.
That's right.
The stadium was the tool for the Rangers and Royals and for the economic impact. The tennis facility was the tool for USTA. The tax incentives on a state perspective and the infrastructure support was the key ingredient for Rio Glass. So Roy says it very often. Do they have the tools to be successful? Because you can give us direction, but if Jeff doesn't have the tool, if he doesn't have the toolbox full of hammers, literally hammers, it's going to be tough for him to hammer that nail all the way in.
Sure.
Well, the tools we're looking to Far Guy over there to bring back to us, Scott.
Money.
The major tool is going to be money. How can we incentivize, finance, or encourage the kinds of development that we?
And we'll talk about that in a minute. We'll talk about the tool chest and what it is that we have at our disposal.
Before we move on, I just want to throw out a question. How many square feet is the first floor of this City Hall building? Roughly.
It's, let's see, it's about 120 for 4 floors, so divide that.
30?
Divide that by 4.
About 30,000 square feet.
30 to 40,000.
Which might be a nice start for somebody a university coming to Arizona to begin to build a presence. Because I think we have the space, and I don't know if it can be done, but it's something maybe we can look into.
Yeah.
Okay.
That might be a great first step. I don't know. That's
Okay, let's.
If we're doing an RFP and we say we've got 30,000 square feet available for, 3 years or 5 years or something.
Okay. Renewable resources. Continue marketing. How about just marketing? And we've got our name out there, and Rio Glass certainly was just an outstanding opportunity for us. And I thank you, Jeff, for stepping up and making that happen. But what we got to do now is to play on it. And in fact, even to a point where we get referrals from Rio Glass. Industries hang within their own industry. Mm-hmm. And these folks are, because they're from Spain and elsewhere in Europe, they probably know of similar businesses that are looking to expand as well. And there's nothing better than getting a warm lead, and that is a lead that this person knows. Jose Maria Villanueva, okay? He may know somebody that he can give us a name and an address, maybe make a little phone call himself, say you're going to be getting a letter from Surprise, Arizona. You might want to listen to him. And that's all it takes. Rather than us traveling all over the world and looking for these opportunities, why not leverage against the opportunities that we currently have at our disposal?
Yeah, that's a good point, Rich. And also, from what I understand, he was very intrigued by I heard this secondhand. Mr. Villanueva from Rio Glass was very intrigued about all the land around City Hall. Mm-hmm. He asked about it. Mm-hmm. And so, so I don't know what will develop out of that.
Sure.
Who knows? But
sure. The other thing we can do is, certainly relationships do sell. Just not the contact, but the relationships that are developed after making the contact. And what we need to do is to attend industry gatherings. You name it, we got to go. And if it requires, and I'm going to say this over and over again in this presentation, that if it requires a council member or a mayor to go with staff to go to these things, so be it. I got to think that there is a little bit of clout that goes with an elected official. I've been told that. I don't know that for sure, but that. As we go out into the marketplace, let's take some guns with us, in figures of speech only.
I want to take me then, Richard.
Okay, but
Hey, Richard, I also think that we can't ignore the importance of taking staff.
Oh,
because,
sure.
And I know you mentioned that, but it is really important because, frankly, you and I and all of us here that are elected, we're here today, gone tomorrow, but they're here.
Right.
And And the reality is, over time, we need to be able to develop relationships so there's continuity
Yes.
over time. And it's really important that we leverage those relationships
Sure.
for a long-term.
Are we in the flow of information of solar, like the Vice Mayor is? So we're kind of, we get the magazines and know who's doing what.
I understand our phone's been ringing off the hook since a press conference.
It has, and we are.
Really?
It has significantly. A lot of them are frankly people looking to get in a piece of the action, build a building, get a job, so on. But the earned media from the Real Glass event was astronomical. I mean, we could spend money all day long and not get anywhere near what we got from that event. But getting back to the question, just very quickly, we have limited resources to some extent regarding our availability to send staff to conferences and seminars and so on. But one thing that we do spend time on is renewable energy because we think it's worth it, particularly solar.
Sure. I don't know if any of you all looked outside this afternoon. We've been talking solar so much that we haven't even talked about wind. Wind could be 24 hours a day. Solar is 12 hours a day. I think that is worthy of investigation as to, yes, we're not in a designated wind area or a wind tunnel area of Arizona, but there is wind here. And there's a lot of generators of wind. And a byproduct could be harnessing that wind wherever we get it and turn it into energy. So I would like to ask staff to look into wind energy and see if it is something that is worthy of taking on. And then, of course, the final product is to market Surprise as a growth area for renewable resources. Mm-hmm. I think we can really tout it now. After Rio Glass coming in, I think we can really make a positive statement to the rest of the world that we are a player, and we would certainly like to look at continuing to be that player.
Does it make any sense? Just this is kind of off the cuff a little bit, Rich, because you and I and Lynn didn't talk about this, but we're putting solar on the City Hall, right? And those are photovoltaic? Those are photovoltaic, okay. So that's a commitment. I'm wondering if we as a city couldn't start changing our fleet out from gasoline to electric. In other words, when you're talking about marketing, Rich,
right,
what are we doing as a city to set an example?
Right. And I think that the solar on this and possibly some wind turbines and that kind of stuff would certainly make that statement. But I think he's got a point that as we turn our fleet in, I would think the prices are relatively good for volume buying through the state. Mr. Beckley?
Alternative energy has been long an issue that we've studied, and there's been a number of potential candidates. We'll continue to do that. We don't have a great buying power in terms of our fleet purchases from year to year. However, one that we do potentially could be our solid waste or our sanitation fleet. Now that's going to come up for renewal in about 3 to 5 years, and in that period of time we could look at alternative energy, other fuel sources, and at that time we partner with other communities, other solid waste firms,
You combine the buying
bus
power.
firm, transit operations.
Yeah.
That's where the real power starts to come into play.
And I would think, just real quick back to transportation and Sharon's deal, is that I think that when we look at our internal circulator, that it ought to be environmentally friendly. And I'm not sure what that means exactly, because there's different products. I know liquid natural gas over in Palm Springs area, they use that for all their buses. Maybe it's electric, I don't know. But I think that has to be, at top of the mind when we make a decision as a city to set an example, so to speak. Anyway.
Anybody else? Okay. Manufacturing and distribution, distributing. We have, or we are going to be putting in a spur. Spur? It's a...
We have a spur, it's a siding.
Extension.
The
It's a siding.
siding.
Right.
And we have a spur that is access, you can access the rail services by this spur, and there's possibly other areas that could have a spur as well. So what we have to do is as a city, is really market the BNSF capability. And I don't know if we have done that in the past. In our marketing material, I'm not...
It's definitely a marketable item, but BNSF has a lot to say about whether they're willing to participate.
Well, it means more business to BNSF, so I would think that they would be willing to participate. I'm not looking at an advertising campaign using the BNSF name, but, rail capabilities, I think, is certainly something to look at in the future, especially when you look at total regional transportation needs and so forth.
Well, I think that goes back to one of the things that we talked about earlier about possibilities for new industrial parks where you could actually do manufacturing elsewhere than other than what we have in our one industrial park, but other areas along the Burlington Northern Corridor. But again, we need to weigh whether or not, as a growing urbanized community, we shouldn't be looking at finding ways to do both, kind of dual duty. Right now, the Burlington Northern Corridor is strictly a freight corridor, and that's where the money is freight business. But we're looking at long range about the possibility of having a high-speed passenger and commuter rail passenger corridor that we might actually be able to trade this existing at least a piece of that corridor for an investment in another freight corridor that connects Burlington Northern and the Union Pacific. So, but that also would open up new opportunities for us to do just exactly what you're talking about with manufacturing and distribution.
We have the designation now of a federal trade zone, and we have that in our south business park. Has it been approved? I believe it has, because I'm going to a meeting on Thursday.
It's getting closer and closer. We're actually, as you mentioned, having a meeting. It's really going to be a West Valley foreign trade zone that we're piggybacking on, so it's in process, but we don't have access to it.
But we have a designated area within our city.
A target area, yes, sir.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Once we get that designation, can that be expanded so we can increase the foreign trade zone area within the city limits?
Yes, it can.
In fact, we went in for 2 requests and came out with 1. And this is really special for Surprise, and that's not every town has this designation within their city or an area within their city. And what we have is we have this to the south of us, right on that rail spur, and it just kind of makes sense that we promote the federal trade zone because it does have its advantages in attracting businesses. And I'll have more information as we go forward on that. We have an APS power substation to the south in the same corridor, this manufacturing corridor where the rail is, and it's hardly used, or it's got a tremendous capacity. And I think Rio is going to bite into that capacity a little bit, but there are certain industries out there that require a heavy use of power. We have the capability in this area, so it might be something that we want to continue to market. What I'm thinking about, and we talked about, is to promote the North Surprise area as manufacturing distribution location, and that would be around the Ox 1. It's right off of 60. It's adjacent to the 303. It is, it complies zoning-wise. with the county and all the zoning that is around Oxfield 1. And it, if in light of what BNSF may do to the north, a couple miles up the road in Whitman, will depend on whether or not this might be feasible, and that is a manufacturing and a distribution center right off of Highway 60, adjacent to the freeway. So it's something I think that we ought to look into, and because the zoning is such that it's in compliance with the area around Ox 1, it may be something that we can look into sooner than later, because there is still a lot of freight that goes up and down that corridor, and will increase as BNSF finalizes their inland port. Create a partnership with BNSF to identify any economic development opportunities which utilize rail. I don't know if that's ever been done before. I don't know if the cities are working in conjunction with BNSF. GPEC maybe in the past, but it's something that we certainly can look into, and if staff could look into it, that'd be great. Any questions regarding that? Education, general and medical. We need to study the community space usage and possibly and the possibility of a four-year institution locating there. The community doesn't require a whole bunch of seats in the chairs, and they're mostly online. So, is that the greatest utilization of that space? It's something to look into.
Just for clarification, that I don't think was a point that the subcommittee brought up, is we weren't looking to supplant the community.
Well, it's not so much supplant. I think it's looking at space utilization. But so be it. Involve carefree partners to assist in developing a plan and to promote the plan to develop this campus, another campus, or part of their property that surrounds City Hall. We need to work in partnership with Carefree.
Yeah, I think just as to support that, Rich, I think you and I and Lynn talked about the 2.5 years I've been on the council. It always seems that when we talk to Carefree Partners that we run off into a cul-de-sac and nothing can be worked out. But I don't know what that means.
Right.
I've never been brought anything that's concrete saying, here's what they want to do, and here's what they expect of the city, blah, 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 so you can make a business decision. The only thing I've ever heard was, this isn't working, they're asking for too much, but there's been no concreteness. You know what I'm saying?
And
Remember we talked about that?
Yeah.
And we wanted, if something doesn't work, let's you and I analyze it, all of us on the council, and say, that's not good for the city.
Right.
Or, you know what? That's good for the city. And
I think that's in the partnership development. I think it's an opportunity to come together. We have a very aggressive city council. We always haven't had a very aggressive city council or mayor. And what we need to do is to take this group and to work in harmony with our partners, our stakeholders.
Right.
And to see if there is now a meeting of the minds. See if there is now the will and the desire to work together for the betterment of the city of Surprise. So,
maybe part of that too is making certain that we are, look, with all the things that are coming to us now and with the future opening of the 303, we are creating a more competitive environment. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, we should be able to look at all of our options, not just say we want this here and we want this there.
Sure.
We're saying, okay, let's look at land for a university. Let's look at land for for a hospital. Let's look at land for an industrial park. But let's not specify right now. Let's look and see if our partners are willing to come to the table and say, hey, yeah, we're interested. We're glad to hear that you're interested in us, but now here's what we can do for you.
Right. Right. This is a reminder now, this is all long-term planning that we've talked about so far. Later in the presentation is short-term stuff that we need to accomplish. But yes, you're right. We have to get out of the box. We have to look at all options, wherever they may be located. And then we need to pursue a teaching hospital, a research facility with Sun Health Foundation and or Banner, or create some kind of synergy with the existing healthcare providers that we currently have present, and see how we can work it and even increase our capabilities. Investigate attracting specialty medicine and or research clinics and hospitals. All we have to do is get the word out. And that is actually make relationships and attract these people to come here and to talk to us. Without having that dialogue, nobody will ever know. Any questions? I've tried to get through this real fast for you, John. Family quality of life. Create and promote retail businesses that service the resident needs to a greater extent. You know, there was a wish list that was put together by the city some time ago, and that is, ask the residents, what would you really like to have here? And it was a Trader Joe's was on the list, and we went out and got a Trader Joe's. And I think we need to continue to look at that. We need to continue to fill in the gaps that we currently have at this time, which brings up another thing, and that is, we need to work with, and it's not on here, but we need to work with the property owners that currently have existing empty property, exactly, and to see if we can put some people in their facilities or their buildings at a reduced rate that might be a home-based business. A tenant is a tenant. No tenant is no tenant, no income. So at least a little bit of income certainly can help. Yeah. But there's some possibilities there that are out of the box. They're not the normal course of business. But why not put people into an existing facility for a short period of time?
Exactly.
Until such time as they
And to update you real quick on that, Rich, Dave Moss is putting together a group of commercial brokers and small businesses in Surprise to talk about what's available, what they will do, whatever. Because what's happened is just what you're saying, is people have picked up the telephone and called the phone number on the sign, and the office is over at 24th and Camelback, and the guy goes, you want 500 square feet? Well, I don't know. We really don't sell 500 square feet. You know, they don't care.
Right.
You know, they're not going to drive from Camelback and 24th out here for 500 square feet. But if there's enough 500 square feeters, right, you know, which we think there is, maybe we can get something moving. They can start filling their space on a short-term basis. Mm-hmm. There can be businesses start evolve out of their home into space. So Dave Moss is very involved in that, and he's working on it. So,
good.
Okay.
Good.
Well, not only that, but a lot of times if a totally unoccupied building costs that builder more than if you have a tenant in there.
You better believe it.
I mean, just if you have the tenant in and you're charging them $100, that owner is probably saving himself $1,000 in insurance.
Yeah.
Making buildings expensive.
Right. Promote Surprise as a family-oriented city that looks for ways to better the Surprise living experience. This is all economic development, because if attracting businesses here, if we don't have that, they're not going to reside here, they're not going to locate here, and they're worried about their workers and their labor force and what they have to live in. So the more we can promote Surprise as a family-oriented city, the better off we would be.
And a big piece of that, Rich, and maybe I'm talking out of turn here, but a big piece of that is our school district.
Right.
And it's got to be, we've got to have just top drawer communication with our school district. And
right.
I don't know how we're doing on that, John, but I'm sure you're working on it.
That's in his report that will be coming.
Cool.
And I mentioned a little bit down here, too.
Yeah.
Provide more youth-focused activities for after school and on weekends. We have a gap there, and I think that going forward, we need to look at that.
Especially teens, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, to give them something to do. Create wellness, get fit surprise programs to reduce obesity, promote healthy living. And I think that you, Mayor, spoke about that as working with Sun Health Foundation and Banner. And Mark and I have been talking about that for several months now. And that is to come up with a program that is going to help residents feel better, be better, and medically fit. Okay? And for all walks of life, for all ages, we've got to come up with a program. Any other questions on that? Recreational opportunities. Utilize Surprise Stadium to its maximum potential. And that is concerts or whatever. I know you hate that, Mark, concerts because it would cost a few dollars in order to accomplish that make it a good venue. But boy, I tell you, there's got to be things that we can utilize that space for and make it more cost effective. Look into the partnership with Speed World to create a venue unique in the valley. There is another drag racing strip out on Bell, way out on the east side of town.
Beeline.
We've talked about it occasionally, and whether or not we include that in the city, there are in Surprise, but some advertising has recently gone out on the highways that said Whitman. But is that a possibility of creating a park venue there? Is it? Could other things be done there? Would there be other partnerships that, like Lucas Oil and so forth, that could really step up and make this a proud place to go, where there's some grass or where there's, other than dirt? Could there be other things happening there? Could it be a bow and arrow range? Things of that nature, is to fill the needs of our citizens.
And the folks at Speed World are very willing to have those conversations with us, and so we should probably sit down. There was a point in time where we talked about one particular event that didn't quite work out, but yeah, you're right. That's a great suggestion.
Investigate opportunities to attract a theme park. Now, I got to think, and I'm going to be making contact this evening, later this evening, with a friend of mine that is involved in those venues, and asked him what it is, what kind of industry conventions or conferences take place, and where they take place, who are the movers and shakers within this realm, and how do we talk to them? Are they open? What's going on within the industry? We need to investigate it. We need to look at, see if there's a Six Flags opportunity here for a surprise. Who knows? Or a Wave World or whatever. But if we don't ever look for it, we're never ever going to find it. So at least by putting it on here in this report, it'll catch our eye and possibly go on record that we need to do something looking into that. Involve council in development opportunities, and I brought this up earlier. Involve us. Each one of us have a unique background, and we can talk the talk and walk the walk in those backgrounds. And so why not include us? That may not be representative in the city staff repertoire. So let us know of these development opportunities, and we certainly will avail ourselves to help. Work with Carefree partners to develop and/or enlarge Surprise Lake Park. I mean, we've got a terrific-looking lake out there, but it looks pretty desolate in the desert. Is there a way to enhance that at that lake? Is there a way to grow it? Is there a way to enhance it even more than what it is? A lot of people visit there. How many more would come if it looked a little bit better? I don't know. And so these are all just things to lay out there and have you think about, Mark. Use existing parks to a greater extent, specializing plans to promote family use into community living. You know, we talked about, Mark, we've had some discussion about that disc golf and horseshoe pits and so forth in park areas like Surprise Farms that doesn't have too much out there except for, I think, some ball fields. And so let's see what we can do for minimal amount of dollars to enhance that event that brings that family to a park. Okay. Any discussion on that?
Vice Mayor Alton?
Yes.
You know, I'll go back to my opening statement. I completely agree, and obviously I wear the recreation hat, but, you know, this goes back to, we counted the other day, there's 11 cities in Maricopa County that continue to build recreation facilities because of funding mechanisms that were put in place 5, 7, 10 years ago. We've stagnated the recreational facility development. We have nothing in the coffer until 2015. Actually, the only CIP fund that has a positive balance today is the library fund, which has a couple $1 million just because we haven't built a new library.
Right.
So, you know, I think I agree with you, and I think Jeff would agree with me that there's a growing trend in America today that recreation is a magnet for economic development. And it's that quality recreation. It's on a bigger scale, sports tourism, quality of life enhancement. I call it the, the quality of life enhancement that really brings more than just a participant. And I think Jeff would agree. But it goes back to the original statement, and not just in recreation, but in all our departments. The CIP projects have gone stagnant, and we understand the times.
Right.
But that's again an investment.
You're right, and maybe that's something we'd look at in a short-term period, and I believe I've identified it, and that is that we leverage. I mean, we've got to have some wherewithal in which to make things happen.
Right.
And
But I think we need some numbers back.
Yes,
Just okay.
it comes
What
up.
if we did a 10 horseshoe pit deal? What would that cost us?
Right.
Okay. And what if we enhanced the park at the lake and did more grass or whatever? What would that cost us capital-wise? What would it cost us to maintain it?
Right.
Then we can put that integrated into our priorities and say, you know, that's real important. That's more important than this.
Right.
Let's do that. You know, and then Mark's got some direction.
Sure.
Well, we also have to look at and I'll just take horseshoe pits, for example. Let's say it costs us $3,000 to do 10 pits. But if we can, and there are horseshoe pitching tournaments all over this state
Right.
every weekend. So if we can bring in a couple of tournaments, you know, maybe in a year's time, we've paid for those pits.
Exactly.
And from that point on, it's a free ride,
Right.
other than the maintenance.
Right.
So we need to look at that possibility
That's right.
also.
From a planning perspective, and earlier on, Vice Mayor, you alluded to things for youth to do after school on weekends. One of the magnets that they have on the 101 and Thunderbird is Rio Vista Rec Center. It's just state of the art. There's public-private partnerships there. Chili Davis has a batting cage there. There's a Starbucks on site. There's a lot of amenities there that drive traffic. And those types of things, going back to what Mark said about magnets, I like that word. Those are things I think we need to look from a planning perspective, from a city standpoint of how can we fill that gap. But I think the other piece of it is the private piece that is missing. The bowling alley that's 85% complete, and indoor recreational activities, an ice rink, a roller skating, those types of things that are things that young folks will do, and especially when it's 110 degrees out in July.
Right.
Totally agree. The next topic is for major goals. This is short term, okay, and that is jobs. We got to get folks jobs. We got to create jobs. We got to get the job market to the citizens. I tried it about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, with jobbing.com and utilizing the links and so forth from the chamber, and it was costing business owners $395 to post a job. I want to do this thing for free, and utilizing the chamber. The chamber is a private entity unto itself. They're not subject to asking public information. It's not a request for public information, so resumes would be very confidential. And should we have a Rio Glass come in and they're looking for, 3 forklift drivers and 14 warehousemen and so forth, our citizens could post their resumes or their qualifications or applications to the chamber, and the chamber then in turn could do a word search and bring out those resumes for those businesses that are located here in the city. Mm-hmm. I think it's a natural, and I don't think it's going to cost a whole heck of a lot. The dialogue has already been opened up at the chamber, and there are some private businesses that are coming in and would assist us for free. So yeah, it could work out where it's another way in which to get our citizens employed that have lost their job and are looking for a job closer to their home. We have 60 to 70,000 cars travel outside of our city every day for work. Why not try to keep some of them at home?
Right. And as a piggyback to that, we also talked a little bit about short-term projects that need construction people. For instance,
yes,
is it on here?
It's going to be.
Oh, is it? Okay, good.
Yeah. Develop free program to post job opportunities within Surprise, and that's where the chamber would come into existence with us. Assist job seekers in posting resumes for employers for review, like Rio Glass could be looking for somebody. Another short-term task is a destination resort. Look into the opportunities to establish a resort close to the White Tanks. Resorts should be LEED certified, eco-friendly, and use renewable energy. That's a given. Should include a convention space, hotel, golf course, and possibly a casino. Enhance the tennis facilities. Analyze the needs and determine the feasibility of a tennis stadium. We've already talked about that at length. Stadium could be a venue for concert, education, and so forth. We need to have an asset inventory study done at staff level. The council and the mayor need to know about all the land that's owned by the city, where it's located, how many acres it is, what it costs, what the market value is at the present time. And that's the reason for that is we got to know what we have at our disposal in order to attract any new businesses, or if there could be a land swap or something like that. Include its current use, estimated value, and future use possibilities. The Solana project, which is the Abengoa skip, work on a job placement, transportation to Solana project in Gila Bend. Mayor, this has been a hot topic for you for some time, and that you would really like to see maybe some job placement interviews here in Surprise.
Right, and I just came up with this thought the other day, the Texcelerator. It seems like that would be a great place to allow businesses that are locating in the valley that we have unemployed construction workers, unemployed people. If we invite them in, give them some temporary space to do job interviews, to take applications at the Texcelerator, I think it would be awesome. But the new thought that I had was, and I know we haven't fully agreed on this monument sign at the Texcelerator, but wouldn't it be awesome if that marquee was rolling? Interview now for construction jobs, Abengoa. Interview now for construction jobs, Rio Glass, or that it's as our residents are driving by. It's not just the business people, but as our residents are driving by, they are there's opportunity there.
Yep.
Now, we have to talk about that, and maybe it won't fit, but I wanted to bring it up because maybe that's what makes it valuable enough to do it.
I think that's a great idea, which I bet you didn't think you'd ever hear from me. But rather than wait until we get a new sign, we've got a sign we could roll that on right now, too.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's an asset.
We could, and right now we'd have to direct people someplace, but if later we can get something that is specific to come in, walk in now. I
Right,
agree with
I'm saying.
Start now.
That's a start, though.
You're right. That's good.
And I think
Idea, it's a
I think the
city
media would work with us too, Mike. We could have a surprise employment page, about the interviews, dates and times and so forth. I think that would be a good relationship.
One more thing on that. You didn't get to the bullet yet. Go ahead.
Excuse me, are you reading ahead?
Yes, I am.
Work with the employer to conduct job interviews with surprise residents in the construction. In the construction of Avangoa, in the construction of Rio Glass, we need to get the word out to these. And Rio Glass is really for it.
And facilitate it.
Yeah, because they much rather, there's studies that have been done, and if the employee lives or works in the same town as they live, they're a happier employee.
Yep.
There's a little less stress. Should a child become ill or something like that, they get a little bit more out of their employee.
That's right.
Than if they were transporting them in from another city. So, and they were all for hiring local. And we always have to make that pitch whenever we're talking to anybody new coming into town. Please hire local.
So how would we now? I'm just like Sharon says. I'm getting in the weeds here a little bit, but who would we have on staff coordinate that? Would that be April or Jeff?
I would, and that was going towards my question, Councilmember Hall. So we're both in the weeds right now.
Okay.
But is it something when you have a group like Rio Glass come in and it's going to be a construction job? And I know a lot of my neighbors and a lot of these folks that are out of work or they go through these periods of unemployment are in the construction field. Is it feasible to require a certain percentage of your employee base to be surprise residents in providing incentives? I don't know, but is that something that we can look at? Is that something that, in supportive of the surprise worker, that we can look at? And that might be a question for the city attorney.
I can address that if you guys want. I'll let Michael do the bad news, and I'll do the good news for a change. Michael, if you want to address this, the concept of requiring them to hire, there's some contract issues there without question.
We run into some contract issues with regards to that. There is the opportunity for some incentives. However, there needs to be some front-end work to it. The city of Marana did an economic impact study of and Jeff mentioned this actually with the Rio Glass deal when he was speaking to you the other night, in terms of what the impact is of an employee who lives actually in the city of Surprise. But typically that's, when you're considering the economic analysis, what you have to look at is it's the new employee that comes to the city of Surprise, not the existing citizen who becomes the employee because they're already the citizen, and so it becomes very complicated.
Yeah, and if I can speak to that too a little bit, I think that often, usually, almost always, negotiations are so delicate that could be a deal killer. And so maybe to turn that around, maybe we just say, hey, we'll give you free space for, like we are working with Rio Glass right now, giving them some space, but we'll set up this thing and we'll get you a sign right on the road that you can have people come in, drop off their applications, you can do their interviews. We have, don't we still have somebody over there, a business center person?
Julie,
that could,
That's right.
Yeah, so we've got a business, so it would be a real simple thing to do, and maybe that thing that just is enough to make the deal in our favor.
I'll just echo, if it's okay, what Mayor Truitt said. That's exactly, instead of hitting them with a stick, you give them a carrot. I mean, candidly, you give them pre-office space. It makes it that much easier for our residents to get to them. So Rio Glass is actually going to be in that text elevator space this week. So and that's how quickly we moved. And we have been referring folks to them, so we're trying to make that happen. But again, both Brentwood, which was the deal before this one, and Rio, both are taking advantage of the text elevator, and that proximity really provides us with the opportunity to provide more opportunities for employment for our residents.
Okay. And would it be within the purview of the city to make those announcements of who's hiring and where they could be contacted?
You mean
Can we
like
do
on
that
our
on our
webpage,
website?
Rich? On our website?
Yeah.
Yeah, on our website. I don't know.
I mean, is that a possibility?
I think we could probably roll it into one of our pieces. Like right now, we have a piece on it that talks about Brentwood and Rio, and we could say for employment inquiries, push on. But we probably want to study that a little bit more.
Well, and,
Okay, yeah.
and maybe we can, that's an area we could utilize the chamber for.
Yes.
Is get them to run
Make
that.
those announcements.
Why don't we get a comment from Ken here? He's
Get
come on
opportunity.
down.
Yeah.
That would be an opportunity for the chamber to
Yeah.
hopefully bring in new business.
That's right.
Thank you, Mark, Mayor and Council. Technically, of course, it's possible to use the website as a place to post jobs. I think we'd have to look very carefully about what the appropriate involvement of municipal government is in the private job market. So I just caution you about that. But
Because then
certainly
Paradise
technically it can be
Bakery
done.
might say, hey, we got some openings, so how about posting our jobs?
Precisely, yeah.
Right.
Well, we would like to channel all that to the chamber, and I think that
makes-
would be a good
sure.
thing, is maybe not have the city get involved in it, but the chamber.
And there's a lot of partnership possibilities
Well, maybe,
with the chamber and
maybe
other
we do a
organizations.
reference, huh? Reference, and you go to the chamber site? Is that what you're thinking, Ken?
Along those lines, yes, exactly. Is that there's clearly a role for the appropriate organization to try and consolidate and be a central location for job postings and job
Right.
and filling a job. And the vice mayor's got a very interesting concept that we'd be happy to assist the chamber in pursuing.
Good, good. Thank you, Ken. Westmec, continued a partnership on a Fab Lab concept in Surprise.
You know what?
Yeah.
I am so excited about this Fab Lab. Maybe my enthusiasm is misplaced, but I'm telling you what, think about this, you guys. I had this discussion the other day with a bunch of residents in my own little town hall. We usually have a glass of wine in our town hall meetings.
Oh, is that 9 o'clock in the morning? 9 o'clock in the morning.
But anyway, here was the thing. Why is it that 60% of college entrants are female? I'm just throwing that out as a question. Why is 40% of college right now male? Where it used to be 20 years ago was the reverse.
Males are more prone to going to tech industries?
I think you got it, buddy. I think there's more and more young men that are saying, a college degree, I just don't want to, and they're looking at different ways because they're more tactile, hands-on, going to tech schools, learning how to work on big rig trucks, working on TV antennas, hands-on, and they're able to make a head of household income quicker, et cetera. So I mean, this was the discussion we had, and that's what we all came up with, was that males, because the tech schools are like 90% male.
Right.
Okay, so I think rather than let's be part of that trend. Now, this is computerized fabrication. I understand that. But that's also part of tech. I mean, more and more manufacturing is going computerized. So that's the real world. So I think this fits in perfectly with what's the trend that's going on in the country.
For those people that are viewing that don't know what a Fab Lab is, it's a fabrication laboratory. And it's computerized, and you can almost make anything that you ever wanted to make utilizing this machine, and it's a big machine.
Well, yeah, it's computers that talk to each other along with a laser lathe, I believe it is. And this is a concept that originated at MIT. And my understanding is there's only one or two of these there's about 39, and there's one or two of them that are west of the Mississippi. The only one I'm aware of is in San Diego. And so it would be the first one in Arizona, for sure.
Yeah.
And the WestMex concept is that they would utilize this fabrication lab for teaching high school students and college students during the day, and then and evenings, but also make this Fab Lab open and available to residents of Surprise.
Yes.
That's their thinking of how they want to give back to the city. And so it can be high school students that want to that want to go into technical type things,
Right.
but it can also be the local inventor. It
That's
can
right.
be the retiree who's got an idea and has carried it in his mind for several years, and he knows he can make it work, but he just doesn't have the opportunity.
Right.
This could be the opportunity. And the Fab Lab is just step one one part of a three-part agreement, because WestMec wants to bring two other parts to the campus when they build their building over by the university. So it's not standalone good news.
Right.
It's continuing good news.
And I think also, Lynn, what's part of my excitement about this is that you look at the shortage. In other words, we have whatever the unemployment rate is, 9.5% to 15%. It's anywhere in there probably. Okay. But when you look at certain industries, we have a shortage. Okay? And one of the industries where we have a shortage is engineering. That's why we're importing so many engineers from India and wherever we can get them, because there's a huge shortage of engineers. Well, when you take a look at a high school student in a technical environment, maybe that would inspire them to become an engineer. Say, hey, what do I have to do? This is cool. What have I got to do to get that? Well, you got to get your engineering degree, and then you can help build planes, or you can help build dams or whatever. And so I just think it cuts across a lot of positive things.
Right.
Anyway.
Any other
agree, John?
discussion?
No, I'm biting my tongue because I get just as excited as you for this, but I won't drone on because I touch on that in the next presentation if we get to it.
We had asked for a report, and I don't mean to be picking on the community university, Mayor, but we had asked for a report regarding an enrollment and all that at a council meeting several
I think they're bringing it
months
to us in
ago.
September, right?
Are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I thought I put it on our short-term task, what we need to accomplish.
Yeah.
ASIC Tech Accelerator, obtain an update on occupancy, cost effectiveness, future plans. What is it from a staff perspective that you would like to see on the community university, and how do you see it being utilized in the future?
Yeah, before we leave Tech Accelerator, also, if it's possible, I understand that one building is not going to be utilized because of the cost of redoing air conditioning and so forth. And I was wondering if we can get an understanding of what that cost would be.
Yeah.
And if there would be, that way we can talk about what return or, what the return would be if we made the investment.
We plan on briefing council in great detail in October on Tech Accelerator, and we can include that as part of that.
Okay, good. Okay. The other thing I was thinking about, Lynn, is with the air conditioning of that place. Did you know Solar Jump has their demonstrative air conditioners on Arizona State University right now? And Solar Jump is one of our people in Tech Accelerator. I was wondering when and if we do the air conditioning part of this building, that Solar Jump is part of it in terms of increasing the...
We're actually, not to get too far ahead, but we're actually exploring that, but we're negotiating something with them right now.
Okay.
Yep. But good
I'm
idea.
in the weeds again, Sharon.
Establish a roundtable relationship, brainstorming possibilities, enhancing the city chamber relationship. We have a great relationship with them. They are emerging as a dynamic chamber. We need to continue to work with them.
They really are.
Leverage, inform council on details on borrowing power. And I think we asked for this. We discussed it in our subcommittee, but we as a council should know what we can borrow, how we can borrow it, and I think it's either is it secured or unsecured, the capabilities that exist now and enable the city to leverage, utilize ultimate goal to use leverage to create greater place of residence for
And how we can
residents.
service the debt.
Yeah, and that's all part of what do we got available, how do we use it, that kind of stuff.
It goes back to FAR guy.
Goes back to the FAR guy back there. Questions or comments?
Vice
That was
Mayor
a pretty
Alden.
fast presentation.
That was good, Rich.
Yeah,
Vice Mayor Alden, Scott and I have spoken, and after we get through all of these initiatives, and then we put on paper what you've requested for us to research, then we'll come up with a number, and then we'll get with Scott. And Scott will say, I think we can get halfway there, we can get all the way there, or you can only get there 1/3 of the way.
Yeah, that's
And
fine.
this is what it's going to cost you to do it, and this is what you're going to. I know what he continues to tell me is, we can do almost anything you want us to do. You just need to figure out how to pay it back.
Right, exactly.
So, you know.
No, that's right. Yeah. Now, Mark, are we talking about September 9th?
Yes.
Is that when you're talking about coming?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's phase 2 of this,
Well,
September 9th?
Yeah. Are we done talking about economic development?
Yeah, that was very good.
Okay, then, if it's okay with council, what I'm going to recommend is that we take education and quality of life at September 9th, and then whatever time's left over, we can address some of these things, and we'll schedule yet another one if that's what it takes. We're going to do what it takes to make sure that all of this is fully vetted, that we
It's
all
only
have an
after 7.
opportunity. Is that?
I was
know
all
we talked,
hyped up for
and you guys
education.
are good with that. The thing is I want to make sure that everybody's at full attention.
Okay.
And we've done a lot of talking tonight.
Yeah, they've been here.
So,
Yeah, that's right.
are we good with that?
Yep. You good with that, John?
Okay. Anything else on economic development? Staff, anything further? Council, it's been a great meeting. Great job, Vice Mayor. And the presentations and the thought that's gone into this by all of you, I'm sure that our residents will appreciate.
Good job, Richard.
Good night, John Boyd.
Mayor,
Meeting is
Good
adjourned.
we have not had a call to the public, which
There is no
listed.
call to the public on a retreat.
I thought it was on the agenda.
It is?
Could be wrong.
Thanks for that respect. Let me tell you what else is going on in my life. I have no friends, and I'm actually being bullied, which is very serious, you know, and it wasn't fun because who likes to be thrown around a bus or a locker and stuff, right? So my grades were poor. I didn't want to go to school because it wasn't a positive